Hello? Anybody home?
Today, I want you to open your mind.
I've almost come to the conclusion that the story is so damn big that the mass of people can't deal with it.
We are in process of developing a whole series of techniques to get people actually to love their servitude.
We face a hostile ideology, global in scope, atheistic in character, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
To change the minds and the attitudes and the beliefs of the people to bring about one world socialist totalitarian government.
The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists.
It has patterned itself after every dictator who has ever planted the ripping imprint of a boot on the pages of history since the beginning of time.
If you can get people to consent to the state of affairs in which they are living, then you have a much more easily controllable society than you would if you were relying wholly on clubs and firing squads and concentration camps.
Tools of conquest do not necessarily come with bombs and explosions and fallout. There are weapons that are simply thoughts, attitudes, prejudices.
As you connect the dots between different people, organizations, religions, history, suddenly the picture starts to form.
The kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men.
Someone born in the United States is not more special than someone born in Mexico. Someone who is white is not more special than someone who is black. They're just vehicles for the consciousness to experience.
They do not want your children to be educated. They do not want you to think too much.
It was learned that the aliens had been and were then manipulating masses of people through secret societies, witchcraft, magic, the occult, and religion.
They reach into our children in music, television, books.
Prey on children's innocence.
How can I disprove lies that are stamped with an official seal?
So if you have the opportunity to stand next to one of these machines, it feels like an altar to an alien god.
Genetic power is the most awesome force the planet's ever seen, but you wield it like a kid that's found his dad's gun.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc is now in the possession of the Army.
Too many others know what's happening out there. And no government agency has jurisdiction over the truth.
Any state, any entity, any ideology that fails to recognize the worth, the dignity, the rights of man, that state is obsolete. A case to be filed under M for Mankind in the Twilight Zone.
It's about time some of you get acquainted with the real hard truth.
It's the heart that says, I will not acquiesce.
Freedom is the privilege to be right. Freedom from the disasters and from mistakes.
You don't connect the dots. It's just a mass of what's all this about.
You are listening to the Secret Teachings Radio. I'm your host, Ryan Gable. Thank you so much for tuning into this Friday edition of the show, brand new and live on YouTube, X, and Facebook. But of course, the majority of you are listening in the normal Monday through Friday archive, tstradio.info, and Spreaker, Apple, Spotify, all the other places you can listen to the Secret Teachings independently 5 nights a week. For those of you who would like to email the show, rdgable@yahoo.com. That email is also on the website. Pretty much everything is on the website, along with links to social media. And, of course, my books as well. And that full archive of all of our past shows. I've really thought over the years about going through that archive and trying to pull out some of the similar shows and put them into like individual little archives to make them easier to find instead of having to scroll through everything. And I've thought about doing that with one particular subject, especially because we've done probably not a lot of shows, but enough that it probably warrants its own separate sub-archive. And that is something that, because we have so many listeners around the world, and we have listeners in Russia, we have listeners in South Korea, we have listeners in Japan, we have listeners in Australia. Sometimes people don't know exactly what the show is going to be about because we don't cover just one thing. And we cover so many different subjects that when new listeners come in, they don't know what the show promo is tonight. Maybe they're confused by it. And so I want to explain that very quickly before we begin the show. The show promo tonight is called David Wilcock Blocking. Insider Edition, and it is an episode that goes into that sub-archive of probably over the years. If the last time I counted it, I think it was somewhere around 20 shows over the entirety of my 15 years in radio, where we've talked about the cosmic con artists. We talked about the snake oil salesmen and saleswomen that are in, I guess you could call it ufology. I suppose you could call it the New Age community. I'm not really sure what to call it. But whatever that is, whatever that whole thing is, we've focused on that probably maybe close to 24 shows. And David Wilcock in particular is an individual who has been around for a long time. I watched, I think, my goodness, probably 17 years ago or something, I watched a video he did on the pineal gland. It was actually pretty interesting. And then I went to a conference, and because I had heard of him, I went to see his talk, not thinking anything of it. And I just noticed some bizarre things during the talk that I mentioned on my show, because I did a show on the conference, made a couple of jokes, said the guy had a giant ego. He made some very strange comments about women in yoga pants that seemed inappropriate. He talked about fingering his audience by pointing out who was using phones during his talk. Weird things that I made a note of. And then I moved on. And then somebody had sent me, a good friend of mine had sent me an article that David Wilcock had written about how he doesn't do any of those things. And I thought, is this guy listening to my show, or did somebody send it to him? So I looked more into it, and then things, as most of the hardcore audience know, spiraled out of control, where the Secret Teachings was essentially blackballed by David Wilcock. He informed conferences that if I show up at the conference, he will leave the conference. Do not give me a ticket or a pass. I had to get covert passes because he's such a big name that they can't have him not show up. So I was either not allowed to go to conferences, or they had to give me a kind of a covert ticket on the down low under the table. And it kind of went from there. And then I sort of forgot about it. And since I forgot about it and not really talked much about it over the last 2 years, I've done maybe 2 shows, 3 shows. Things have really unfolded. And things have unfolded to the point where we're talking, I mean, these are ongoing court cases, but we're talking about things that I can't keep up with, honestly. And so because I can't keep up with them, I've got to be able to look for people who know what's going on and can follow those court cases and what's going on with that. So that's what we're going to do tonight on the show. Usually you might look at me as the expert on this, but I'm not the expert on this. I have some solid foundational information and, of course, my own personal experience, and a series of shows with clever titles like Top Gun Con Artist and David Wilcock Blocking, Lord of the Lies, and all those other classic titles that some listeners love so much. And then we did that Stavatti episode recently about those fighter jets that they're going to make for the military, and supersonic Cessnas, and all that great technology that I don't think Boeing can even build. So anyway, without further ado, what we're going to do in the show tonight is I have a guest who is going to be joining me here in just a moment, and he is going to talk with us about the court cases. These are not just Wilcock, of course. These are Corey Goode, Gaia TV, and we're going to look at the details of all of this. And apparently, from the last time I checked in, there are people all over the internet, YouTube, X, that are doing what we've done for years, and that is now like trashing David Wilcock. I've made songs in the past. There's other people making songs. I don't know if anybody genuinely watches David Wilcock anymore and finds him to be anything but like just kind of a fictional, made up kind of entertainment. But then again, maybe some people do. So anyway, without further ado, I will remove the promo picture, David Wilcock Blocking, and we will bring on our special guest tonight. Our special guest is John Christian Spadavecchia. Thank you so much for joining us, John. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
So for those who aren't terribly attuned to the David Wilcock from Corey Goode universe, the main way that I got involved basically in this subculture community is I started writing a book on Stavatti Aerospace about 2 years ago. So it's been about 2 years that I've been doing this research and writing for this book. And recently, someone on X/Twitter back in May recently left the platform. I mean, they were basically banned, but they left the platform, and they were doing most of the coverage for Corey Goode and his legal issues. And since that person is gone, I've now, attempted to fill their shoes. I obviously can't fill their shoes, but I'm attempting to stand in and, provide the Twitter community and the YouTube community with a solid source of information when it comes to the ongoing issues surrounding David Wilcock and Corey Goode.
Well, it might as well be David Goode because they worked pretty close together in making up a whole bunch of fake stories. What made you interested in this subject? How do you get drawn into this?
So that's a question I have answered before. The TLDR short answer is when I saw the court deposition that got leaked in December of 2022 involving Corey Goode. I watched that whole deposition and I was a little bit beside myself that this guy could just roll into federal court and just admit that he's making everything up. And naturally, since Corey and David are attached at the hip, they're like two peas in a pod, if you will. I naturally asked the question, well, if Corey's been lying about everything, what has David been lying about? And so then I started looking into Stavatti Aerospace because that was the main thing that he was involved in at the time and still is, back in late 2022, early 2023. So I started looking into Stavatti, and I guess I'd say for about 6 months, I only looked into them casually. I wasn't like a hardcore researcher or anything like that. And then, after researching them for about 6 months, I discovered the existence of the Dimitrov lawsuit, which is the federal lawsuit that they're involved in. And they're defendants in the case, not just the Stavatti corporations, but the Stavatti individuals are named individually as defendants. And, in that case, come to find out, they're being charged with, racketeering, fraud, conspiracy, and running a Ponzi scheme. And so it was right around that time that I decided to just, stop casually researching Stavatti and kick it up a gear. And yeah, ever since then, for about 2 years, I've been writing my book.
So as you heard my little story, I had a personal direct conflict with David Wilcock, kind of unintentionally. And that led me to being a curious observer on the outside and sort of making it a comical show when I did talk about the subject. And I did cover that deposition too. That was 5-6 hours of entertainment. Did you go to space in my physical body? I don't think so. That was just pure entertainment, but I kind of forgot and just left that all in the past. And then I start seeing the work of people like you and a handful of others, and I start seeing these lawsuits in great detail. And what was just comical or pure entertainment, or maybe a small personal issue that I laughed at, turned out to be all the things that I used to speculate on the show. That this isn't just people making stuff up. This is like consumer fraud. This is like that you just gave a list of things in regard to these court cases. This is a lot bigger than someone just making up stories about UFOs. This is a big legal issue.
Yeah, I mean, if you read the facts in this case, just the initial filing and then Stavatti's response to it, it basically outlines this absurd idea that someone within Stavatti forged the CEO's signature when they took this promissory note from this plaintiff Dimitrov. And, the company's trying to make the defense that, well, since it was a forged signature, it shouldn't count, or it should somehow be, null and void. And of course, that wasn't what Stavatti's initial response in the case was. Their initial response in the case was they were well aware of the promissory note and the proceeds that came from it and their obligations there too. So, this case, it's really just a whole laundry list of things. I mean, the plaintiffs allege that everyone in Stavatti that says that they have had a security clearance to work on a classified project or something, it appears that that's false. I mean, we could just go on and on with the Dimitrov lawsuit. It's a big stain.
This is just Stavatti. This is just Stavatti. This doesn't involve the necessary. I mean, indirectly involve the Gaia lawsuit, the Corey Good deposition. This is all separate.
Right. This is completely separate. This lawsuit was filed in 2023 for this investor Dimitrov, who signed a promissory note in March of 2022, or it might have been the end of February. It was either the end of February or March of 2022. The promissory note terms were the investor gave them $1 million, and then 3 months later, Stavatti would repay the investor that balance of $1 million, and then over the following several years, owe them $5 million in interest. So it's essentially a loan with a 500% effective interest rate.
Not a very good business decision.
No, and the fact that the principal was due 3 months after they signed the note, that's questionable. But I have to also say my research has uncovered that standard practice at Stavatti. There's there on that Niagara Falls hangar that they own, there is also a mortgage on that property, and it had the same 3-month maturity date for its interest. But I don't know how much interest is on that mortgage. But as far as this promissory note that Dimitrov signed, it's about $1 million in principal and $5 million in profit. So it's a total for $6 million roughly that they're asking. And Stavatti's on the ropes, and they're on the hook to pay it too.
Now, for anybody who doesn't know this, what exactly is Stavatti? It's an aerospace company, quote unquote. And from what I understand, they've never built anything. They've been around for 30 years, and they're basically what seemed to be a front company for something.
Well, they turn 31 years old this month, so they're only 30 years old for a few more days. Stavatti is a company that was formed in 1994. It's gone through some quote unquote reorganizations, and it's had some additional corporate entities added to it over the years. But it's basically a 31-year-old aerospace company that's never manufactured a single product, delivered a single service, and has never had any revenue in its 31 years aside from 2 pre-orders for 2 hover cars. Yes, hover cars.
Now, what about the SM-39 fighter jet that they have a lovely 3D rendition of that on the Wilcock YouTube page?
Right, you're looking at the sizzle reel, right? So the so-called sizzle reel.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that's not real? I can't buy one of those.
No. And I mean, there's so much disinformation around this too. Like, just for example, this craft they say will be available at $85 million a unit. Well, I actually have a sales agreement for this SM-39, and it says in the fine print that they can charge you up to 10% more in the sales order than what you're quoted for, and there's nothing you can do about it.
That's from Stavatti.
So, yeah, that's right in the fine print of the SM-39 sales agreement that I have. So it's just little things like that. And the same sales agreement says, if you buy it, they'll sell you the automatic cannon filled up with ammunition for you when they ship it.
That's a laser cannon, am I correct?
So they do advertise what's known as a gas dynamic laser weapon, the so-called Stavatti laser rifle. I actually did a whole Substack article on the Stavatti laser rifle, and I've talked about it on Cambian's show too. But that's actually a very old Stavatti topic. That they actually came out with the white paper for their Stavatti laser rifle back in 1999. And, this was even the subject of ridicule on early 2000s message boards, forums, things like that. It's this laser rifle that they've conceptualized that will use a radioactive isotope known as polonium-239, which is going to be a logistical nightmare in the field in any kind of, battlefield situation. And it doesn't last that long, and it has massive recoil. I mean, there's all these logistical problems surrounding the Stavatti laser rifle, and it has almost, like I said, since the late 90s, early 2000s, become sort of internet joke. It's actually one of the things that they're better known for is this so-called Stavatti laser rifle hoax.
Well, they do have what I've seen, they do have a series of 3D printed models of these planes. So they have produced over the last 31 years.
David Wilcock is 3D printing those himself. He actually has a video out showing where it's done. He has some garage or boiler room where he has a 3D printer and he 3D prints them. Some of those models are actually made by a third party. The bigger ones, those are made by like a third party modeling company. But those little itty bitty ones that don't look very good, those are ones that Wilcock 3D printed himself.
So then I have a question. I don't have the specifics of this, but you're much more of an expert on this than I am. In my assessment, from what I've seen, John, it appears to me that David Wilcock has invested a lot of money with Stavatti, that he may have gotten, this is speculation completely, but he may have gotten ripped off. He's on like the board of Stavatti, I think if I understand that right. And now he's basically defrauding other people for the company. That's kind of the impression I get. I don't think it's that simple. But what do you think of that? What do you know about that, if there's anything to know?
Well, those things all do seem to be in play, and I can understand how you would come to those conclusions. Whether he actually is defrauding people to get involved in Stavatti, that's a big case to make that he's actually doing that. Here's what we do know. Based on Stavatti's first ever SEC filing last year in November, and anyone can go to the SEC's Edgar database and look this information up for Stavatti. According to their SEC filing, they offered a private placement where they got 8 non-accredited investors and 1 accredited investor to actually invest in the company. And all told, at that point when they filed, and again, this is Stavatti affirming this information, the SEC hasn't verified it, but Stavatti claims in this SEC filing from November that they've gotten $80,000 to $90,000 of investment. Now, we have also spotted what appears to be one of those investors on X, and it does appear to be one of David's fans, a rabid, fervid fan, you could even describe it as. So we do know that to some extent, he does appear to be getting people into the company. On his YouTube live streams, he has talked about slots and private placements. That's all skirting securities law. So we do know that he is trying to get people into the company. Whether he has actually committed fraud in the process of doing that, I'm not sure.
We know that he's committed fraud in, let's say, a non-legal, non-lawful way in regard to the stories that he's sold over the years. So it would not be surprising if that is what he was doing with in legal terms with the company.
True, but I mean, I don't know how many people he plans to draw into Stavatti's circle, based on things like the Pete Peterson GoFundMe operation. Like, I don't know if he's actually using that as a Stavatti talking point. I doubt it, because they're completely unrelated.
No, I agree with you. I guess what I'm suggesting is that he's using it more as a means by which to appear legitimate, and that's how he's able to keep his YouTube money coming in. That's how he's able to keep, I guess, his lifestyle going. It's all about image, I think. I agree with you. I don't think that he's going to be making tens of millions of dollars from Stavatti or something.
I mean, as far as him being on YouTube, the reason he's on YouTube is simple. They're making a ton of money off him. Remember, YouTube, if you do it through a Google device, they take 30%. And if you send a super chat on an Apple device, where the YouTube app is through the Apple App Store, Apple's taking an additional 30% on top of Google and YouTube's 30%.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. So Dave Wilcock averages like $1,500 of super chats every week on average, roughly. So YouTube and Google and Apple are taking their chunk. They're taking their cut. So, I mean, that's really the reason why he's on there, is because they're making a lot of money from what he's doing. Mm-hmm. And it just hasn't gotten to the point yet where he has triggered some kind of community guidelines or anything like that. I don't think anything like that has happened. I mean, he's CrowdStruck. We're a little bit past the 1-year anniversary where he did that CrowdStrike stream. I believe it was on Tuesday, June the 25th or the 26th, where, he got around, like, for example, you're on YouTube, you're not allowed to call people Adobe Acrobat files. Well, David Wilcock decided to get around this guideline and call someone that by making a slide and putting their name up and coloring certain letters in their name differently so that the others spelled out an Adobe Acrobat file. You know what I'm talking about. So that's how he got around that, because he didn't verbally say it. He just made a clever PowerPoint or, keynote slide on his MacBook and did that. And of course, he also said that I hate Christians because my middle name is Christian. That's also completely ridiculous.
Are you serious? He said that?
Yes, he said that on stream. Go back and look it up. That's how I first got on Cambian's show. Cambian first, I mean, I was never on his show, and all of a sudden that stream happened, and Cambian reached out and said, "Would you like to be a guest on my show?" And I said, "Sure."
My goodness. So you hate Christians. We can maybe we can talk about that later.
I mean, my middle name was given to me by my mother at birth. It has nothing to do with hating any religious group. It's so silly.
And Wilcock is a peculiar individual. The stuff that he comes up with is, you got to give him a hand in some way for it. It's profoundly ignorant and dumb. Over the years, I've noticed that and this might be more of a speculative thing in regard to what you do, but over the years, he's gone from one con to another con. Like during 2020, he promised that the president was going to be reinstalled in place of Biden. That didn't happen, so he shifted to the angel scam and telling people that he's got superpowers from bathing in his own urine. I'm sure you've seen that one, bathing in a bathtub.
Yeah, he actually said that multiple times.
Yeah, I've got at least one clip of it. Yeah, bathing in piss. He wants your DNA in the tub. That's what the Archangel Michael wants. And then now he's gotten into Stavatti, back and forth. Just in your personal opinion, before we get more specifically into the lawsuit stuff, opinion. What is your opinion of this guy? Is he stupid, or is he just a smart, dumb person, a dumb, smart person? Is he just another run-of-the-mill con artist? Or is he working for somebody? I don't think that. People speculate on that. What do you think?
Well, I mean, in the context of Stavatti, and again, since I've been researching this company for 2 years, and I have over 20 hours of phone calls with current and former Stavatti associates, based on all the talking and looking that I've done, everything that I've been able to gather, it just seems like David, he allegedly knew Chris Beskar since 2009 when Pete Peterson introduced them. And everything indicates that that's actually probably true. So Beskar warmed up to David about the prospect of Stavatti for about 10 years. He didn't actually invest in the company officially until about 2019, April of 2019. So it's been a little over 6 years he's been officially a member of the company. And I think it's really a case of him wanting money. He says, I actually just read his Gaia resignation letter in full a few weeks back. And he clearly says in his Gaia resignation letter that he's not sure how he's going to make money after he leaves Gaia.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of this has to be taken in the context of him needing money. He invested, by my calculations conservatively, he's probably invested all told about $1.4 to $1.5 million in Stavatti.
This is what I've heard too. Yes.
This is a fairly conservative calculation. It actually could be higher than that. It wouldn't surprise me. But I can't go higher than 1.4 to 1.5 because that's just the information that's available to me. It's a conservative calculation.
Even 1 million is it's a lot of money, especially when you've got tax problems on top of that.
It's a lot of money considering that the amount that he's given them is roughly equivalent to his IRS tax debt. So I guess his cunning plan was to invest in Stavatti, and he would get a quick enough payoff where he could pay off his delinquent taxes and then have, a big overhead.
Or I've got a theory, maybe he was going to invest, get the plane, get this SM-39, and then fly away from the IRS. That's my theory.
Well, there is one video. Unfortunately, I've been forced to go through a ton of David Wilcock video for my research. But there is one video where he asks, or he begs his audience to buy his product because he wants to go on a hover car and leave Earth for the so-called Hawaii planet. You've heard of what I'm referring to, right?
Honestly, this is one I've not heard of, the Hawaii planet. Okay.
David Wilcock supposedly he's not the only one who said this, but he's one of several who have talked about supposedly there's this extraterrestrial planet not that far from Earth, and it's basically the whole planet is basically Hawaii weather and Hawaii climate. And so David very much wants to go to this planet in his hover car when he builds it. There is actually a stream where he says this.
I was under the impression a hover car was for Earth, though, that it hovered. I didn't realize it was a
So,
space vehicle.
I've been forced to get into the minutia of this hover car, a bit more than I think the normal person would like.
Yeah.
But that's because I'm doing research and writing a book. And the hover car is going to be limited to 5,000 feet above ground level. It's actually, David Wilcock says that this supposed hover car will also fit in the average garage. But I did the math on the dimensions of this thing because Stavatti has published that information. And, with the wings up, it would just barely fit in like a 2-car garage. And I have a 2-car garage and a 1-car garage. I actually went out and measured my own garages, and I could not fit Stavatti's hover car in any of my garages, except my 2-car garage with the wings up.
So you heard this claim, you looked into their documents, found out how big it was, measured your own garage, the average garage, and find that it probably won't fit very well.
Right. And another interesting spec about the Stavatti hover car is that it has a maximum payload, I want to say, of 500 pounds. So you can only put 500 pounds in it. So I guess fat people ain't going to be flying in Stavatti's hover car.
I guess maybe maybe that means you won't be able to go to space if it's got 500 pounds. If you keep it under 3, maybe you can break the barrier.
Yeah, and to think they've gotten 2 pre-orders for hover cars, and I calculate each one of these pre-orders being somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000. So they've potentially gotten up to $40,000 already for this hover car in pre-orders, and those.
Well, that's separate from the 80,000 investment, correct?
Right, that's separate from the 80,000. Yeah, these are actually deposits for hover cars, whereas the 80,000 investment they got per the SEC filing from last year, that's for equity. They bought equity in the company.
Wow. I have a question for my audience. Why aren't any of you dumb enough to give me $10,000, $20,000? You can invest in this show, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. Just donate right now. I've got hover pickup trucks. I don't understand how people can make these outrageous claims, be wrong over and over and over again, and people still give them money. It's not your expertise, but it's something that's always baffled me, especially following Wilcock and Goode for so long. It's the stuff that they say. And Corey Goode, and when he went to court, that deposition, did you see the video after that where he's walking through the woods and he basically tells his audience that what he told the court in the deposition was basically a lie because he was. Did you see that video?
I don't know if is that the one where he was hiking with his wife and saying how much he was glad that how well it went, the deposition?
No,
because he did that one. Yeah, he did that one a couple days after the deposition. I don't think I've seen the one where he admitted that everything he said was a lie. I know that
everything I said was a lie. He was walking and he said, I had to tell them something like the effect of I had to tell them what I had to tell them or something, and don't take it as this is not real, and basically playing.
Well, I know Carrie Cassidy's been saying that about Corey in the court case. She's been saying that Corey, lied about lying or some kind of narrative like that.
Lied about lying, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, okay, what proof do you have, Carrie, that he's lying about lying? Like, really? Like, we're gonna go there? Like, what kind of proof are you gonna bring? It's kind of ridiculous.
Well, yeah, it's ridiculous. I had a guy come up to me at a conference in Las Vegas, and I was talking to Jimmy Church and having an issue with him about Wilcock and sponsoring these guys. And this person comes up to me and he says, well, yeah, sure, Corey Goode admitted he made it all up, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen. I said, what do you mean he made it up, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen? He said, well, he imagined it, so it did happen to him. I said, yeah, but that's
delusion. That's totally delusional.
Totally delusional.
Like, if I just think something, that means it happened. Like, if I just think about myself getting a Lamborghini in the next hour, and the Lamborghini is going to suddenly park itself in my driveway.
A hover Lamborghini.
Hover Lamborghini.
Yeah. Okay, so for those of you just joining us, we've got John Christian Spadavecchia here on The Secret Teachings tonight, and we are looking through some of the court cases. We're going to look at Goode and Gaia as well. We're going to talk more about Stavatti Aerospace. I'm Ryan Gable. This is The Secret Teachings, tstradio.info. Thank you so much for joining us. Those of you listening via audio only, the mass majority, you can find this show on a video platform like YouTube or stream on X or Facebook. It will also be linked up under the audio show description on Spreaker, Apple, Spotify, etc. If you would like to support the show, you can subscribe to the ad-free show, and you can get access to a lot more than that, including our document archive and montage archive. Again, tstradio.info. Okay, John, so why don't we do this? Let's look at some of these. You mentioned the Dimitrov Stavatti Aerospace lawsuit. You've also sent me the Goode and Gaia lawsuit and the Goode versus Remzauer lawsuit. Can you break, and then we also, of course, have the David Wilcock in court thing that we can talk about. Can you you're the expert on this, break this down for us. What are all these different lawsuits, if we can go through them one by one, and then let's talk about the David Wilcock in court story, please.
So the Dimitrov versus Stavatti lawsuit we touched on earlier, that lawsuit was filed by this investor, the plaintiff Dimitrov, in February 2023 against the Stavatti corporations and individuals at Stavatti. And we, touched on what it's about. They're accusing Stavatti of running a Ponzi scheme. And this is completely separate from Gaia and Corey Goode. In fact, I actually have, I don't know if you're aware of this, but some DMs of Corey's leaked a few months ago. And Cambian actually did a show on it about these leaked Corey DMs. And Corey was actually directly asked if he was involved in Stavatti, and he said no. So to the best of my knowledge, to the full extent of my research, it appears that Corey has no connection to Stavatti. But anyway, that's Dimitrov versus Stavatti. And I've been diligently uploading all the filings. You notice that they're all blue buttons because I've uploaded all the PDFs for these. So that's Dimitrov versus, yeah, and it's been going on for about 2 years. So anyway, that's Dimitrov versus Stavatti. The other two court cases are, if your audience isn't that well attuned to Corey Goode, these are lawsuits that he launched in 2020 against his former employer and one of their former managers. And then the Goode v. Remzauer lawsuit, that's Corey basically suing his quote-unquote former business partners. That lawsuit is basically done and dusted with. Corey tried to get a default judgment against Roger Remzauer. Roger didn't even show up. He went into default in the case because he didn't show up and didn't respond to anything. And the judge still sided with Roger and denied Corey's motion for default judgment. So Corey is basically completely. He didn't even show up, and he still won. The guy, like the court clerk would send the guy mail, and it would come back returned to sender. Like, this guy was not responding at all, and he still beat Corey in court. And of course, this case was also the case that once upon a time, Cliff High, you're probably familiar with Cliff High.
Yes.
Cliff High was also a defendant in this case. At some point, Cliff High hired a lawyer, then decided to fire his lawyer, then notified the court that he was going to represent himself pro se. And then Cliff proceeded to make a motion, making the argument that the court didn't have jurisdiction over him. And he worded his argument in such a way that the court actually just granted it, and Cliff got dismissed from the lawsuit by himself after firing his lawyer.
Wow. So I'm guessing that means that Corey Goode's cases and his representation as well are not that good.
No. And as his lawyer has admitted, she's basically working for him for free now because his corporations are bankrupt. And I know that, like, his one corporation, I think it's Good Enterprise Solutions or SBA Media or something like that. Like, the corporate entities in Colorado, they're inactive. Like, they're in bad shape for filing problems. And, his lawyer has affirmed in court that Corey's corporate entities are bankrupt. And so she's representing Corey for free now.
Now, what about the Light Warrior Defense Fund? I'm sure that's this little PayPal fund that Corey has set up where you can click the button and donate to him for all of his so-called legal problems, which he all initiated, by the way. All of these lawsuits were started by Corey. They weren't started by anyone else. That's an important distinction. The light worker initiated these lawsuits, yes.
And this fund, he's allegedly using it to fund his legal defense, or I should say legal offense. And it came up in the deposition, like some questions about what the money from the Light Warrior Legal Fund is being used for. And so it's highly controversial, as far as Corey Goode goes and the so-called Corey Goode Wilcock critic community that exists out there. The Light Warrior Legal Fund is seen almost like the Pete Peterson GoFundMe scam. It's looked at very dubiously.
Now, from what I understand, Corey Goode has he has a, I don't know if I'd say a strange background, but he has a background, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, he's got involvement with other people. Like, for example, I actually forgot the kid's name. My goodness. Oh, Jordan Sather. I don't know if you recall that kid, but he had kind of worked with Corey Goode, and I felt like there was a strange, almost kind of like, I don't know what to call it, conditioning relationship that they had. And Sather became really big, and then he kind of dropped off. It's almost like Corey Goode was running something larger than just a UFO 420 back scam.
Well,
I'm not saying but
I am aware of the whole Jordan Sather angle when it comes to Corey Goode, and all I can say is, I can make a quick plug and say that Amazon documentary Dark Alliance interviews Jordan, and they talk about his time working with Corey. So anyone that's more interested in that whole Jordan Sather Corey Goode angle can check out, or should check out, the Dark Alliance documentary, which I did not produce, by the way. David Wilcock is blaming people in court for making that movie. He considers it to be defamatory, and that's in the transcript. I don't know if I guess we'll be going over it tonight, but apparently
yes.
Dave Wilcock is in the habit of walking right into court without a lawyer and saying X person produced this movie when it's not true.
With no evidence, yeah. Well, again, he also said that your name being John Christian means that you hate Christians or whatever that.
Right. He did say that as well.
He said a lot of stuff. In fact, I honestly at this point can't remember if what I'm going to say is true or if someone made it up as a joke. But I'm going to lean at like the 51% mark that this is true. I'm pretty sure that Corey Goode had also claimed, and maybe I'm wrong, but that he also claimed that he was getting legal advice from the Blue Avians. So maybe he doesn't need that an attorney. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but I'm pretty sure he alluded to that or said something to that effect.
Yeah, that kind of rings a bell. I think maybe he did say that, or maybe it wasn't legal advice but political advice. I don't know. I think he might be right though. I do vaguely recollect him saying something like that. And I just have to say, don't the Blue Avians have, the power of prophecy or the ability to foresee events in the future? You'd figure they would have, given their old buddy Corey some kind of tip off and let him know, hey, if you go down this path with these lawsuits, it's not going to end up at the rainbow you think it's going to end up at.
No, giving him some better legal advice, show him where a pot of gold is, he can get a better lawyer. I don't know. It just, none of it made any sense to me. I think he did. I wonder if anybody can find that. I'm pretty sure. I think I even have a copy of that somewhere because I saved all this stuff in a hard drive. The thing is, John, there's just like literally hundreds, or as you know, thousands of hours of this BS that I can't keep up with it, and I don't have the time to sit and go through. Wilcock releases like a 6-hour video. Who's got time to sit through that?
He does that every week now. It's gotten up to 5-6 hours. When he started streaming on a weekly basis back in March of last year, it was only 3 hours. And then it just slowly grew up to these 5 to 6 hour live streams. And half of it's slides where it's the value of the content is not high. Let's put it that way. And, just to touch on what we were talking about earlier briefly, if we're talking about brass tacks as far as exactly why Corey filed these lawsuits, I've heard different things speculated. I've heard that he thought that Gaia would capitulate and cave in and just pay them to walk away. Obviously, the exact opposite is happening, and Gaia is counterclaiming, basically countersuing Corey now. So Corey's on the back foot legally.
Well, I don't think that's a mistake on Corey's part. The Blue Avians should have guided him better because Gaia is like it's a bigger company. They've got money. They've got attorneys.
Yeah, and that brings up another thing that's been speculated as to why Corey is doing this is, besides these 2 lawsuits, Corey does also have this trademark dispute with Gaia at the Trademark Trial and Appeal Board. So the long and short of that is, back I think in 2019, Corey filed trademarks for some of his SSP story that he's famous for, like 20 and Back, Blue Avians.
It's in my
Secret
content
Space
creator
Program.
Bible. It's in
Yeah.
Yeah.
Corey's trying to trademark a bunch of that stuff, and Gaia disputed it, and that whole situation is on hold while the civil trial is going on. So the speculation is that Corey wants these trademarks because Gaia has a lot of content that talks about that stuff. So for that Gaia to leave that stuff up, they would have to pay all these trademark license fees to Corey, and so Gaia doesn't want that. So that's basically like the two main lines of thinking that I've heard. He either thought that they would settle early and give him a bunch of money to walk away, or he's trying to hold out and get these trademarks and get some trademark money from Gaia.
Now, see, I was also thinking, that makes sense. I was also thinking that if you're arguing and you have, cases, like legal cases about trademarks, and in the deposition he says it's in my content creator Bible, or whatever he called it.
It's franchise Bible. Yeah, that's what he calls it.
Bible. Yeah, that's not my question. My question was, can anybody else communicate with the answer but you? Is something I created? No. Something I made up? I mean, if you have trademarks on something, or if you're trying to essentially patent words like secret space program, doesn't that mean that you made it up? So it's fake. It's like you wrote Star Wars. You made something up. I'm not sure why that hasn't convinced people that it's all fake, and I'm not sure that why Corey Goode hasn't just made it very clear publicly that, look, I made these stories up. You like them, that's great, and let's just tell funny stories. Let's tell science fiction. I don't really get that.
Yeah, and Corey's already trying to get out ahead of the possibility that he might lose those trademarks, and he might have to dump the whole SSP, 20 and Back, all that stuff. He was I don't know, some of your audience may be aware of this, but Corey was recently on a podcast called The Supernatural Girls a few months ago. And on this podcast, Corey's floating the idea that for a number of years, his mind was basically controlled by dark archons, or call it whatever kind of negative entity you want to call it. But he was claiming that dark archons were basically controlling his mind. And he may be prepping some kind of excuse like that, as for the reason being why, he got caught making up fake stories and selling it for money and having it out with his employer afterward. He may come up with an excuse like, oh, I was under mind control by X or Y or Z.
Wow. Yeah. I could actually, I never thought of that, but I could see that happening. He's a slippery fellow.
Because he faces an uphill battle to get those trademarks. Because those were pretty common use in so-called ufology circles for decades. I mean, I have this old book on my bookshelf about, and it's a nonfiction book ostensibly. It's a book about extraterrestrial Mayans, and that was a big part of Corey's story. Like the whole Gonzalez thing or whatever, like he was like a reincarnation in like a future timeline of a Mayan or something.
He also said he was the prophet Enoch reincarnated at one point.
Yeah, he said he's the modern day Enoch, I believe is the terminology.
Well, I mean, for being reincarnated and having communication with extraterrestrials, and Wilcock being, of course, the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce, you'd think they'd be able to handle this a lot better.
Yeah. I mean, you would think Edgar Cayce would be able to predict, if he was in all these legal and debt troubles. David Wilcock. I went out to, I don't know if you're aware of this. I went out to a Stavatti event, or an event that they were allegedly sponsoring, to take a look at them in the field and get a glimpse of them up close and see if they're, they conduct themselves like a reasonable aerospace company would. And, this event that they were at, it was such a joke. Stavatti was not received well at all. And, during breakfast one day, David Wilcock came down and sat at the table right next to me.
Did he know who you were?
Apparently
Yeah.
not. Apparently he had no idea who I was. He didn't recognize me as the guy who he said hates Christians on a live stream months back. This happened back in May. I was having breakfast, and David Wilcock comes and sits right next to me. Doesn't recognize me at all. So
And did you didn't say anything, or you just
no, I didn't say anything. I made a point not to say anything because what was I going to say? Hi, I'm this guy that's been writing this book about Stavatti, and I'm one of your critics.
I might have probed him, just kind of ask some questions, pretend like I didn't know what was
Oh
going
yeah,
on.
over toast, I would have said something like, "So, about all this shit you're telling your audience."
Over some blue eggs and blue ham.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's look back at these lawsuits again. So I want to pull these lawsuits back up, and then you have the Substack article that you wrote.
Yeah, I guess we can start with part 1 of the Substack. So I deleted. There was a hearing in the Goode versus Gaia case because the Ramsor case is basically dead now. There was a motion to compel David Wilcock with this case because he hasn't been cooperating. So just as a quick summary on what's going on with David in this case, late last year, David didn't think he was involved in this case at all. It was, there would have been a scheduling conference by the judge and the parties that was posted on the docket, clearly saying that David Wilcock was going to be deposed. And people would come into his live chat and ask David about that. David said, "Oh, there's no Corey case. Don't worry about that."
I remember that.
Yeah. Fast forward to December, Friday the 13th. Gaia delivers a 1-inch thick, allegedly thick subpoena to David Wilcock in the middle of the night on Friday the 13th. And ever since then, David has basically been complaining about it in almost every single live stream. He complains that Gaia subpoenaed him in this case. He's complained about what they've asked for. And his lawyer has given every excuse in the book as to why he has not been able to cooperate and confer with the lawyers that subpoenaed him on these matters.
They always have family issues.
It's either our median Christmas or their families in the hospital. We'll see in this hearing here where David basically claims that his lawyer is now dying and that both of his lawyer's parents are dying at the same time.
That's unfortunate.
That's a highly unlikely coincidence of mortal events. The lawyer's dying and both of his parents are dying at the same time.
So
that's awful.
It's a horrible thing. I'm sorry about that if anybody's listening. That's a consistent thing that I've seen. I think in regard to his attorney, and I've heard other people make similar excuses in the UFO, New Age, whatever community. In fact, I've had that with guests that I've had scheduled, and then they find out who I am, and then they'll email me and literally say things the same. "Oh, my mom is almost dead. She's in the hospital. I can't do the show. This just happened last night." I don't know. That must be a talking point or something, because I've seen other people use that too.
I think it's just a convenient excuse, and because you really can't question it, right? Like you're gonna say, "Oh, your poor mom's in the hospital. You can't make your obligations." Nobody's gonna say that.
No, that's like there's an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. I don't know if you ever watched that show where he says Larry David says the same thing, except he said you got to use an uncle because a mom seems too obvious. If you say your uncle's really sick, no one's going to question that. Who would make up a story about a sick uncle in the hospital? Anyway, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I was just talking about the Gaia cases and how Wilcock got caught up in it. So anyway, that Gaia subpoenas Wilcock in December of 2024 last year. For about 4 months, David just complied with how he thought he could comply or get away with complying, the little amount that he could comply with, and he allegedly sent them 12,000 pages as far as a document production. But Gaia asked him to narrow down his production based on some certain search terms. And apparently at this point, David and his lawyer had a falling out. His lawyer told Gaia's lawyers that he wasn't going to participate anymore. Like Rafi abandoned the whole thing and said, "See ya." So David's lawyer is now out of the picture ostensibly.
I believe that's what I have on screen now. His attorney, you have this document. His attorney said he would no longer participate in this discovery process.
Right. And so At that point, Gaia's counsel filed with the court what's known as a motion to compel, which is basically a motion for the judge to order David Wilcock to participate in discovery and confer with Gaia's counsel on this matter. And then later on, actually, let me back up. So the judge calls a hearing on this motion to compel. Gaia files it. The judge calls a hearing for it on July 1st. A few days later, the judge adds to this hearing a discovery dispute involving Corey Goode. So David Wilcock sort of out of the picture. I say sort of out of the picture because, he's talked about in part 2 of this transcript as well. But the court announces that they'll be hearing a dispute on a Corey Goode matter after the David Wilcock portion and the motion to compel is dealt with earlier in the hearing. So this became like a full boxing card. It became David Wilcock and the motion to compel, and then once that was over, the court would turn its attention to Corey Goode and his lawyer Valerie Aneros not, cooperating on discovery either. And so the whole hearing turned out to be about an hour and a half, and each issue took up about half the hearing.
I love how he says he has to always reinforce this. My show was very popular. The view count showed 500,000 viewers. I've got all these episodes of Ancient Aliens.
So, now that we're looking at the transcript here, we should add that, as we're coming up on this hearing, I know that myself and a lot of other people are going to attend it. And I'm thinking to myself, David has probably gotten a lawyer for this thing, right? He's gotten a lawyer to represent himself in court. I say it's at least 80% likely that he's done this. Well, apparently myself and a bunch of other people were wrong, because this hearing happened on July 1st and David showed up completely unrepresented. He informed the court that he would be representing himself with no lawyer, pro se.
What was he in his sequence jacket?
No, he was wearing a white dress shirt. He dressed relatively conservatively for the court. He wasn't. He was. I think he was pretty aware that the sequins on his shoes would not be getting him any bonus points with a federal judge.
That's a little bit too much. Maybe Angry Daddy stopped by. I don't know. I guess he showed up professionally. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so David shows up to this case just completely unrepresented. And at this point, I know that there's a very good chance it's going to turn into a circus, because David is going to say things that he shouldn't say, and he's going to say too much. And both of those things happened plentiful in this hearing. David Wilcock goes on rambling tangents, talking about he was on Ancient Aliens, that he was a big star. Oh yeah, we're going to see that.
So he's basically rambling on about his career.
Right.
Wow.
So the court basically asks Gaia's counsel, when they start the hearing and start hearing Wilcock motion to compel, the judge asks Gaia's counsel, what is the basis for this motion? And they explain in all the details how David Wilcock has been working with them, and they feel his production has been insufficient, and they need him to search these 8 specific search terms on the platforms that they think are responsive and get back with them. So David goes on a rambling tangent, saying that, he doesn't, he claims that he used email to primarily coordinate with Corey or communicate with Corey. And I highlighted that in orange because later on in this hearing, as we'll see in the transcript, David changes his story and later says his main method of communicating with Corey was WhatsApp. So I've highlighted in orange in the Substack everything that is provably untrue or contradicted by David and just probably completely false.
And I guess he also did he also claim that the process of discovery itself was an attack by the cabal or the deep state that they were trying to stop his work, correct?
He did not specifically say that in this hearing. He did not say.
Not in the hearing. He said that on the live stream, though.
I'm trying to remember. He may have implied that it was part of that, but he knows that Gaia's lawyers watch his live streams. So if he's going to accuse Gaia's lawyers of like being some evil conspiracy working with the quote unquote cabal or whatever, you know, he might have some problems. They're watching what he says.
He did that for sure. I have the link to it, so I know that I can send it to you if you want to see it after the show.
No, I mean, if he said that, I completely believe it. It's something that he would say. He said so many things. Sometimes it's difficult to remember certain circumstances off the top of my head because my head is full of so many Wilcock factoids. It's actually kind of sad.
I'm the same way, but so I feel for you. I appreciate and I see and respect all the work that you put into these documents. This is a hell of a lot of work.
Yeah. So David basically goes on a rambling tangent in his response to Gaia's attorneys. I mean, he says so much. He brings up the existence of this confidential settlement. This is one of the worst things that David did in this meeting. So for anyone who's, you know, maybe needs a little bit of backstory or is not attuned to the whole Corey Goode matter or Corey Goode drama that's, you know, unfolded over the years, allegedly back in 2018 when Corey magnanimously exited the company and David quit, so allegedly so-called quit, Gaia was going to go after David because of all this drama, the resignation letter getting leaked and all the damages that they had suffered. They were going to go after David. And according to David in this hearing, they did go after David. And just like Gaia late last year decided to send him a subpoena on Friday the 13th, back in 2018 when they went after David, they decided to, I guess, subpoena him during his honeymoon. And David Wilcock claimed that this act by one of the attorneys that was at that hearing on the 1st, David claims that this act basically ruined his marriage and caused the honeymoon to collapse, and his ex-wife Beth left him there, abandoned him halfway through the honeymoon.
I see that, and if I scroll up a few lines, I noticed the part where he says, "My own wife wanted me to not even talk to Corey Goode anymore, and I continue to do so." That might have contributed.
Yeah, that's been speculated that she doesn't like Corey and that she also doesn't like Chris Baskor and Stavatti. There's probably a handful of reasons why she ultimately decided to leave him. It's probably not just one reason.
Well, he admits that he lies to his wife here, doesn't respect her, and then in the next couple of lines he says it's their fault that she left me.
Right. And I've seen some other things to indicate that, yeah, that whole story that David's presenting about this subpoena wrecking his marriage. I mean, the marriage lasted for a further 3 years. So I don't know if I would use the term wrecked the marriage. But I mean, it may have done some damage, may have been the opening salvo, but I don't think it was what ultimately wrecked the marriage. That was probably David. But anyway, so they go after David in 2018, and David gets this lawyer Raffi, the same lawyer who's now allegedly dying and has abandoned David. But back in 2018, David got this lawyer, and you know, it took out several months. But according to David, in January of 2019, they came to a signed, confidential, secret agreement where, I mean, I don't know all the details, but from what I've heard through the grapevine, is that this settlement was basically like that David would retract everything, and he did write an apology letter saying he was sorry for, you know, the whole gem and resignation letter drama. And, you know, David, as part of the agreement, the confidential agreement back in 2018, 2019, David may have given Gaia some information or some documents that would help them against Corey. But I don't know that for certain. It's all a matter of speculation. And the very existence of this agreement before this hearing was speculation. We didn't know for sure because it was a confidential agreement. And as we see here in yellow highlighting, when David was going off on one of his tangents, you know, David didn't bring a lawyer, so a lawyer couldn't stop him from doing this. On one of these tangents, David just blurts out the existence of this confidential agreement that he has with Gaia from 2018. He just blurts it out.
And then I see as I say, Gaia's counsel says we would like to not talk about confidential.
Yeah, Gaia says, especially in front of Valerie Aneros, Corey's lawyer, because now she knows and she's told Corey. So now Corey knows that David may have dimed him out back in 2018. It's probably keeping Corey up at night. He said that in front of Corey's lawyer, David did. And so
Wow.
not only do Gaia's judges interject and rebuke David for doing this, but the judge even said, yeah, and not to mention there are people dialed in, such as myself, who are members of the public listening to this hearing.
Just be mindful, he says.
Yeah, just be mindful that David just totally revealed the existence of this previously confidential agreement. And by the way, on David's live stream this past Sunday, David appears very sad about this whole thing. He talked about how there's been damages to Gaia, and he was very sorry for disrespecting the confidentiality or something. Like we may not have seen the end of this. This may be just the beginning. Gaia may sue David for breach of contract for revealing the contract.
So I have a question to ask you before we go on any further. So I see this statement here about they wanted to replace Corey Goode with Emery Smith. Unrelated to the lawsuit, but Emery Smith was a guy who, I don't know if you ever heard this, it became really kind of viral in our community. I got at a conference, I got a conversation with Emery Smith going, and I got him on a recording saying that Corey Goode had hired Jordan Sather and, like, I forget the exact number, half a dozen people to dox a lot of people. Do you know anything about the doxing? Is there any comments on that in any of these lawsuits? You know anything about that at all? I'm just curious.
We haven't talked about the search terms that Gaia is trying to get from David here. They're saying that David just gave them a 12,000 page document dump that isn't responsive to these specific search terms. And the specific search terms are all about what you just touched on. They're all about like the doxing groups and like the Joy Jacks and all that stuff. They're requesting like Gem, Fade to Light, Blue Eagle, Thomas Crown, all of this stuff from like 2018, 2019, they're asking about.
And Corey Goode is the Blue Eagle.
And allegedly, yes, that is Corey's code name in this whole conspiracy. Like I guess these guys thought it was like a James Bond movie or something, so they gave each other code names. So Corey's code name was Blue Eagle.
All right, please proceed.
That's my understanding, anyway. That's my understanding of it. And,
well, whatever.
And it's like
oh, go ahead.
Thomas Crown. That's also a code name for something. That's not someone's actual name in this matter. So, like, they want these search terms ran because Gaia wants to look at that angle. And you know, David is, you know, this whole motion to compel is about why David can't comply, why he doesn't allegedly have access to something anymore.
Can I ask you in relation to that 12,000 document dump, did that include, what was the controversy over the semi-nude or the nude photograph?
So in this 12,000 page document dump that Guy is upset with, included was a lewd photograph that Gaia claims was unresponsive. In other words, they're basically asking, how did this shit get in here? And Raffi, David's lawyer, you know, the one who has since abandoned him, Raffi responded to Gaia's lawyers by saying that it's a lewd photo of Simon Parks and that a fan of Simon Parks was distressed that they were getting these types of photos. And so they went to David and Corey, I guess, to get them to, I guess, speak up somehow about it, to get it to stop. So it was like almost like a cry for help by this distressed person who was allegedly a David or a Corey fan. And so this lewd photo was produced to Gaia as part of document dump, and Gaia saying that they never should have gotten it. And, you know, Raffi, David's lawyer, explained how it got in there. Yeah, I did reach out to Simon Parks last month and asked him to comment on the situation, and predictably, I've heard nothing. So
I was assuming that it was a matter of Wilcock didn't know what he was doing, didn't really care, didn't realize the severity of the situation, so they just dumped a bunch of random stuff.
I mean, it's possible, but I mean, David, I guess maybe David also thought that, like, you know, anyone who sees a lewd photo of Simon Parks, maybe that person will become demoralized.
Psychological warfare against the courts.
Yeah, maybe that was David's plan. Who's to say? I mean, David, his lawyer claimed that they gave them the lewd photo because they thought it was responsive to the request. So this is why we're here with this motion to compel, because David and his lawyer constantly did not communicate well with Gaia in the discovery process so far.
And is that the same Simon that had intercourse with the feline alien?
To my knowledge, yes, that is the same Simon Parkes that was a UK politician who has also claimed to travel to an extraterrestrial planet to basically smash a Catwoman and produce hybrid human Catwoman offspring.
Not the Hawaii planet.
Not the Hawaii planet. I don't think. No, it's the different planet. And Simon's wife is aware of this and condones it. That's my understanding.
Okay. Now, does he?
No, I'm sorry. She doesn't condone it. She doesn't condone it. She's okay with it. That's what I meant to say.
She's okay with it. Okay, maybe he takes the hover car to the feline planet. I was thinking that maybe it was necessary to the discovery process, because if it was perhaps a human feline porno, maybe it would have been admissible in court if it was proof of extraterrestrials, if it was some kind of weird sex video they made. But I guess it wasn't that. So
I mean, all I know is Gaia complained that they didn't think it was responsive, that they should not have gotten it.
Yeah, that probably was shocking to whoever opened that up and saw a nude Simon. Okay, so where do we go next with this? You kind of guide us for the remainder of the show, 50 minutes or so. Kind of guide us.
So yeah, I mean, just what you're looking at now. I have in orange the part that I already mentioned earlier about David walking into court and on his rambling tangent, claiming that this documentary Dark Alliance was defamatory against him and Corey. And David also took the opportunity to tell the court that he thinks Jay Widener produced the film, which is just a complete and utter falsehood. Anyone can see that it was filmmaker Darcy Weir that produced that film. It was not Jay Widener.
So does that mean that based on these two documents I'm looking at that you have on your Substack, does that mean that Wilcock basically, he goes into court and he tries to make the issue about how he's the one that's being attacked or defamed, like it's their fault?
Right.
And the lawsuit was filed on his honeymoon, and
yeah, David's legal strategy without a lawyer during this hearing was basically just tell sob stories of why he thinks he's a victim.
That might work on YouTube, but it doesn't work in court.
No, and again, he should have gotten. David needs a good lawyer that can represent his best interests. Mm-hmm. I have serious questions surrounding this lawyer Raffi, and David's whole spiel about him dying and his parents dying at the same time seems highly unlikely. Seems perhaps more likely that David didn't pay Raffi, and didn't want to address that. He doesn't want anyone to know that he didn't pay Raffi, and that's why Raffi abandoned the process while it was still ongoing, because Raffi wasn't getting paid. So it's all highly questionable.
This is the ramblings of a narcissist. I'm in this many episodes of Ancient Aliens. I've got 500,000 views on YouTube. I got the subpoena during my honeymoon. They destroyed my marriage, even though I didn't listen to my wife. And also, Jay Widener made this documentary, which he didn't. That's like extreme narcissism. He's got a serious problem.
Right, and what he's accused Gaia of is just simply untrue. They had no part at all in producing that film. And David just walks into court bareback with no attorney and just he just shoots his load full of lies all over Gaia's counsel.
He just did it raw right there in front of everybody.
He needs to get an attorney for his actual legal matters. And as a critic, I have to say, like any of his fans, reasonable people, well-intentioned people as they are, I would think they would have to say the same thing. David needs an attorney. This whole hearing and transcript is proof that he needs an attorney. Yes. He just goes on rambling tangents that make things worse. We'll see where, Gaia has these 7 search terms that they want David to search for. During the hearing, David brings up this 8th search term called Thomas Crown. And that wasn't part of the 7 search terms. But as soon as David utters it, Gaia's counsel asks the judge to include it, and the judge agrees. So they expand the scope of the motion to compel, which is ultimately approved, by the way. The judge ultimately does order the motion to compel.
And does it say here, am I reading this correctly, that Mr. Wilcock's iPhone was stolen in October 2023, so he didn't have access to what they want?
Correct. That's part of his argument. His argument is that, and first of all, during his live stream, he claimed that he lost his phone
Not that it
on
was
his
stolen.
live stream. Not that it was stolen. He claims that he lost it, like he misplaced it. Like it's a big airport. It's, I guess it's very easy to misplace a phone. So
It's a big house too he has there in Colorado. Maybe he lost it in the mansion. So
well,
he
I think he
lost it,
says he lost it at DIA. Actually, he lost it at the Denver
Okay.
airport, I think is what he claims.
but then someone stole it.
But
Maybe-
he
maybe
tells the court that it was stolen. Yes.
Well, maybe he meant he forgot it. He lost it in the airport, and then he assumes someone
But
picked it up and stole it.
The
That-
issue with that particular phone is David claims that that was a 512 gigabyte phone. After he lost his phone during his trip to Los Angeles, which, by the way, was to film this levitation movie that Stavatti's Chris Beskar is involved in, and that levitation movie appears to be a giant piece of vaporware. Like David flew out and tried. He even went to like a theosophical library to film scenes for this documentary Levitation about people who levitate, and it looks like the movie is just this total vaporware. It's just not happening. But anyway,
the Manly Hall Library, the Philosophical Research.
I
Society.
don't know if it's that specific one. I mean, you would think if it's in Los Angeles that it's the
Probably.
Manly P Hall. But David said he had to go to a theosophical, I think a center or a school to film part of this movie. And by the way, I'm just thinking, like, David, isn't that like a dead giveaway that the people you're dealing with maybe aren't who you think they are?
Yeah, and it's kind of ironic to take a flight, assuming he left from Colorado. He flies from Denver to Los Angeles on a standard plane, knowing that he has the technology to get there even faster. I don't know if you heard that stream where he claimed that you could get from in the new plane, you can get from Denver to Los Angeles in like 5 hours.
That's this new Stavatti airliner that they're marketing.
Yeah.
And yeah, they claim that it can go just under the speed of sound. And so it
Well,
can effectively super cruise and all this other stuff. I mean, it's just words on paper. They're just making stuff up.
Yeah, and what he said was, I mean, the proof that he makes it up is that what he said in that video was that you can get there in like 5.5 hours or something like that. And even people in his own chat said, even on a conventional airline, it doesn't take that long to get to Los Angeles from Denver. It's like a 3-hour flight.
Yeah, it doesn't take that long.
No. Anyway, let's
So if
go
it's a
back.
direct flight. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go back to the paperwork here, though. So what do we have, and where would you want me to scroll down, or still this document?
Yeah, I mean, that part in yellow, that's where the judge is cutting David off. She has to interrupt David because he's going on a tangent.
I'll let you vent for a second.
Yeah, the judge basically tells David Wilcock, I'll let you vent because clearly you're a mental train wreck, but we have to keep things, focused here. That's basically what she's telling him. She's basically saying, you're here pro se, you're just rambling out of your mouth. I'll let this go on for a little bit, but we're not going to sit here and listen to you all day. He probably would talk their ears off all day.
5-hour stream from court. I mean, he would stream it to YouTube if he could do it.
Yeah.
The super chats. Okay, so where does this go next? To take us through this, please. I'll try to stop interrupting. Go ahead.
So, this is just more of Gaia's counsel right here. AD is Angela Dene. She's one of Gaia's counsel. And she's just explaining to the court, again, what their support is for the motion to compel and how David has not been cooperative. And again, this iPhone, he replaced his iPhone that allegedly got stolen with a 128 gigabyte model. And he'll later claim in this hearing that because his new iPhone doesn't have as much storage as the old one, he can't get things like his text messages that Gaia is asking for. That's what he's claiming.
And that's despite the fact that he had claimed earlier that the communication with Corey Goode was primarily through email.
With email, yeah. As we'll see, WhatsApp gets into focus in the later part of the David part of the hearing here. David apparently has his WhatsApp account, or he, according to his own allegation in the hearing here, David had his WhatsApp on his phone tethered to a desktop app for encrypted messages. And I guess since he lost that iPhone, there's like a process where to tether two different clients or two different devices, you scan a QR code to tether them. And I'm pretty that does sound legitimate because like Telegram and Signal were kind of the same way. So allegedly this is what David had going on. But since David lost his phone, he can no longer access his WhatsApp messages because they're on that device only, allegedly, because I know, as Gaia's counsel would say, will make, after David says this, Gaia's counsel will say, well, it's our understanding you can just download WhatsApp and retrieve your messages from the cloud. But I think David had something different going on where they were actually encrypted on his phone. And so since they were only encrypted with that key pair, with that secure key pair, and he lost that phone, I don't think he can tether any more devices to it because he doesn't have it anymore. And so he can never get those WhatsApp messages back, allegedly. And like I also said, since he only has a 128 gigabyte phone now, he's telling Gaia that he can't get back his text messages. And, if I'm Gaia, I'm like, well, we have a spare 512 gigabyte iPhone. We'll just send you that.
Yeah, sure.
We'll send you a free iPhone. And then what's your complete excuse going to be? Because you'll have the full capacity to restore a backup. And I'm sure David will have some excuse for that as well. But
It's
that's
like
basically
he obviously, I think, dumped the phone as an excuse to not have the evidence. I mean, it sounds like if I was an attorney, my God.
I've considered that angle, but remember, a year after he lost the iPhone, someone asked him in chat about the Corey case, and David was like so nonchalantly ignorant. He said, "Oh, there is no Corey case."
Yeah, I remember that. Okay, I remember that.
So, I mean, did David spoliate evidence by pretending to lose his phone in an airport?
I don't doubt that. But I don't know
I don't have any evidence to say that that's what happened, but I mean, people can speculate on that. But I mean, that's to say that David, knew that this was going to happen and willfully destroyed evidence ahead of the hearing and ahead of him being subpoenaed in the matter. For me, right now, that's a bridge too far. I can't go there.
To totally understand speculation, but from what we do know, let's go into the next document.
Right. So, as you can see from the highlighting here, David, while Gaia's counsel was making an argument to the judge, David tried to interject, and the judge sternly rebuked him the same way that a parent rebukes their child, or a school teacher might rebuke an unruly school child. The judge basically rebukes David and says, "Do not interrupt. Let this person speak. When they're done, you'll have your turn to speak." I mean, this is kindergarten cops right here. Like,
Also,
this is
mute yourself when you're not talking because your typing is distracting.
Right. That was another thing during this hearing. David was typing a lot of notes. And so, like, whenever someone or even the judge was speaking, you'd hear all these click, click, click on the keyboard. And that got on the judge's nerve, too.
Okay, so should I move on to the next document here?
Right. And this is Gaia just making their argument. And, and I don't know if this has been covered or not already, but as we'll see in part 1 and in part 2 here, David will claim that after Corey allegedly sent him a cease and desist letter in 2018. I don't know if you're aware of that, but David pretended Corey pretended he was going to sue David. He sent him a cease and desist.
Yes.
David will claim in this hearing that he basically stopped talking to Corey when that happened. We will see later here in this hearing that Gaia has proof that that is not true. Gaia has proof that they've been communicating in 2022 and later. So David says
this is the 7 search terms, right? This is that part.
Right. That's where they start getting into the 7 search terms. And again, the search terms are like, Blue Eagle, Gem, FTL, Fade to Light, all of that, like behind the scenes, Corey, Goode, like attack move.
Fade to Light, is that like a callback to Jimmy Church's Fade to Black?
I think something like that. Yeah, I think that was like a spinoff of Jimmy Church or something. But one of the blogs was called Fade to Light, and then there was Thomas Crown, and of course David will say that that he calls it Thomas Crown. And by the way, apparently his lawyer Raffi, before he abandoned David, he told Gaia's counsel that there were no documents regarding Thomas Crown. So when David comes in here and opens his big mouth about it, Gaia's counsel are not happy. They're basically saying that we need David and his lawyer to cooperate in good faith. Whenever they say something like that, they're basically saying we think that this other party is lying.
Yeah, that's a legalese way of saying, yeah, you're lying. Exactly. So that's what this yellow text is here. Good faith as well as we could. That's what David Wilcock said.
What David is replying to here is that Angela has informed the court that David he's run out his time limit to object on anything on the subpoena. When you get a subpoena or you have other legal formalities, you have a certain amount of time to object. After that, the time limit's up. You technically don't have the right anymore. You have to ask the judge, mea culpa, will you still take it? And Angela Dene has told the judge here that David Wilcock is timed out for objections. So he's waived his right to an objection. And David is complaining that they're saying this, but he thinks it's okay that he timed out because he was proceeding in good faith. And I make mention in the commentary here that, like, that's not an excuse. That doesn't get you out of a timeout. Everyone is obligated to participate in this matter in good faith. Just because you're meeting that requirement doesn't mean you get to violate time limits.
Yeah,
so it's he
needs better representation, some kind of representation that inform him.
He needs a lawyer at this point. He needs a lawyer.
Okay, so this is the 7 search terms, and if we scroll down here, we've got some orange and a lot of yellow here. So what is this document?
Right. So the yellow part, that's where I mentioned earlier, where David tells Gaia that, they're trying to search for Jim, but David's trying to tell them that he never called it Jim. He called it Thomas Crown.
Thomas Crown.
And so this is what we'll call this is what we'll cause Gaia's attorneys and the judge to expand the scope of the motion to compel.
So he basically
and then in orange
himself into that too.
Right, because he just showed up without a lawyer and started rambling. And then in orange here, he makes mention that he hasn't been talking to Corey anymore after that cease and desist letter came in 2018. And that's in orange because that's obviously seems to be untrue.
And if I scroll down, I see the next statement. What is this yellow here at the bottom? This is quite a substantial amount of yellow.
So at this point in the hearing, the court really starts to focus on the question of David and WhatsApp. And when David is asked about WhatsApp by the judge, David says, okay, but let me just be clear about something. And this is when, instead of, addressing specifically what's going on with him in WhatsApp, he has to tell the court first how famous he is.
Again, I was a New York Times best-selling author and the top guy in UFOs.
That's what he says. I was the top guy in UFOs. I have a huge following. By the time I got hired by Gaia in 2013, this is interesting where he says this. He says, I had to take on a defensive role where I don't talk to my audience very much, if at all. Like, this guy really respects his audience, right? So apparently David is, I guess, trying to say that he downloaded WhatsApp, a messaging app, because he didn't want to communicate with people. Like, I mean, is that what he's saying here? But anyway, he basically goes on to say, about his relationship with Corey. Again, he's not addressing WhatsApp. He's going on a rambling tangent. He said that, he had to manage Corey to keep Corey from getting into trouble. And David claims, and I read this verbatim, this has been an ongoing struggle because Corey has made some mistakes that I think are unconscionable.
And he knows that.
Yeah. And he's basically just complaining about, this is just another complaint that finally leads into him addressing the question of WhatsApp. So David claims that he wanted to get a secure messaging protocol in 2013 that couldn't be spied on by a spooky government agency. Yeah, like they can't read your WhatsApp. I mean, WhatsApp is one of the most popular messaging platforms in the world. I'm sure it's totally secure.
And it's Facebook too, right?
I think it is owned by Facebook now. And David will actually claim that he stopped using WhatsApp in 2020 because of that very reason, that Facebook bought it. And so when Facebook bought it, David stopped using it, allegedly. But David's complaining that he hasn't produced the WhatsApp messages because he can't access it, and his attorney told him not to. That's another thing we find in this hearing. David blames things on his attorney, and basically is telling him that his attorney instructed him not to comply with the court.
Yeah, it says my attorney told me if you can't get the stuff, you can't get the stuff.
Right. But there's another part later on where David will blame this whole thing on his lawyer. And David will also say that the lawyer is dying and his parents are both dying at the same time. So David is throwing this lawyer who's dying under the bus. I guess David thinks if he's already dying, it doesn't matter if you throw the guy under the bus, right?
Yeah, it's like a senile Pete Peterson. Doesn't really matter. Take advantage of old people. Take advantage of the dying. Wow,
So this-
man, this is worse than I thought.
This part of the transcript, David is rambling on again to try and support his notion that he can't access his WhatsApp messages. And David actually lifts his laptop up for observation of the court because this is like a Zoom call. So David lifts his little laptop up and shows them and says, hey, the messages are on here. I just can't access them, especially when he tells the court.
And he's trying like hell to get those messages. He's the victim here. He spent many hours working on this. He's been going through hell to get these messages.
Yeah, and he goes into how, his new iPhone doesn't have as much space. So, like, that's allegedly the reason he can't get his stuff and produce it to Gaia like he's supposed to.
And this is where he says that they're talking only WhatsApp, right?
Right.
Said email before.
Where earlier said that it was via email.
Okay.
And now he changed the story to WhatsApp, which may be, it used to be WhatsApp and now it's email. Who knows? All I know is David needs to produce this stuff because he's been ordered to by the judge. But anyway, some of the parts I've highlighted in here are just some of David's pathetic excuses. He claims that the laptop that he holds up, that he can't access anything on there because it has a bad battery. That's his reason for not being able to access anything. I mean,
bad battery.
I'm sure Gaia would pay to have that MacBook go to like an Apple store and get a new battery, because I'm sure that's probably not all that expensive, all things considered.
No, I don't think that it is either, and especially same with the phone. Only 128 gigs. I'm sure they'd be happy to provide him with a much larger phone. It says here the battery is puckering. I can show you up close. It's very scary. This thing might blow up on me. Yeah,
it's got a bad battery, so it might blow up on him.
It's gonna explode. He told the court that.
Yes, he told the court that.
Okay, so then we've got this next page. What do we find here?
So this is where Gaia's complaining about Thomas Crown. Like the part I've highlighted says, also, I'll flag that Mr. Wilcock referenced the term Thomas Crown, which previously his counsel made a representation that there would be no documents that contain search terms like that. If we want this discovery process to be productive, and this is Gaia's counsel addressing the judge in the court, we do need Mr. Wilcock and his counsel to engage with us in good faith. They're basically telling the court in legalese that David and his lawyer have been dishonest.
My God. And just so we're clear, this is only a very small portion of the records that we have from the courts, right? This is just a really small little snippet, and we already find all these contradictions. And
no, my unofficial transcript here is the vast majority of everything that was said. I may have made a couple omissions here or there, but this is very, very, very close to verbatim.
Okay.
So go back up. There's a part up there that I've highlighted that we should probably talk about. So at the bottom where it says, just to respond to one point, and again, this is Gaia's counsel talking. We're not here to litigate our claims with Mr. Wilcock, but the resignation letter that Mr. Wilcock submitted to Gaia was ultimately leaked. He sent it to just a few individuals at Gaia, and we maintain that it was not released by Gaia, or that it was not released by us. So it follows that it had to have been released by somebody else who had access to it. We have also seen documents within plaintiff's Corey's production, in other words, what Corey's been giving them, that suggest that Mr. Goode and Mr. Wilcock are discussing his resignation letter before it was sent to Gaia, and that Mr. Goode requested to be copied on the resignation letter when it was sent out. So they're saying that they already have the goods on these guys to an extent.
So they're going through the process of letting the courts kind of deal with it. They know that they're lying, and they've said, "Hey, we want you to, respond in good faith." But they basically got them dead to rights.
Right, based on what they already have, what they currently have.
Yes, yes. And that doesn't include what they'll get with the documents that if he turns those over with
I
the
mean,
search terms.
David claims that he didn't know how it got leaked, but Guy has emails where him and Corey are discussing it.
Discussing it, yeah, yeah.
So, and here's another part in yellow. We've also note that we've also seen documents within Corey's production that show that Mr. Wilcock and Mr. Goode had discussed the cease and desist letter and agreed that Mr. Goode would send Mr. Wilcock the cease and desist
They
letter.
discussed the letter.
They discussed it, and David greenlighted it.
He greenlit
His own
Corey
cease.
sending him his own
Yes, he
cease.
greenlit Corey sending him a cease and desist letter. Again, this is all for appearances. It's all to make it look like it was something it wasn't. It was all a conspiracy.
Yeah, it's all
apparently it's what Guy is alleging, and as the facts that I've seen have been borne out, it does appear that there is some scheme here. But Guy already has those emails of these guys discussing this.
In other words, it almost feels like Guy is letting him hang himself in court. They're letting him.
I mean,
sort of
yeah,
walk
I mean,
into the-
in a civil case, you don't get a public defender, so I guess, I mean, I'm pretty sure they don't have any problem with him coming and airing all the dirty laundry in court that he did. Did they anticipate that? I don't know.
Well, probably not anticipated, but once it started happening, it's kind of like they were probably prepared. He wasn't. And then once it started happening, you can just kind of sit back and watch the show. And then this is the green part. It says, I'm going to grant this motion to compel docket number 473. That's the judge.
Right.
Could we, there's still more here in this particular post that you have with the documents. So why don't you take us through this as quickly as you can, and we'll get to the second part.
So at this part of the transcript and at this part of the hearing, they're basically just, telling the judge, we are going to have this expanded scope. We're going to add Thomas Crown as now an 8th search term. And the judge agrees. And, the judge gives David Wilcock some instruction on how to confer with counsel. And if you scroll to the bottom here, in the highlighted portion I have where the judge says, there's the possibility that you might have some communications with Goode since your relationship with him ended. I understand you didn't communicate with him anymore, but it's possible there was communication with him and you forgot about it. The judge is basically saying that she thinks David is full of shit.
Yeah, he's lying.
But she can't say he's actually full of shit. So they say things like this. Hey, I want you to search those because you may have just forgotten about some things.
Yeah, hint, hint. So the judge and, of course, Gaia both are using, proper terms in court to say, you're a lying sack of trash. Give us what we asked for. You're lying. Okay, so now we scroll down to the next document here. What is this that you have in red arrows?
So at this point, David is telling the court that he agrees with the motion to compel. He does tell the court and the judge and Gaia that he will produce based on these 8 search terms. So if David doesn't meet this requirement by August 1st, he's going to have some explaining to do because he told the court that he would do it. But anyway, he's complaining. He says he'd be happy to be deposed. On his live streams, he claims he's terrified of being deposed by Gaia. So I don't see, him saying at this hearing that he'd be happy to depose is him just being cooperative. He tells the court that he knows he's not guilty, which again is a very curious thing for a person to say in his circumstances when Gaia's on the record saying what they have.
Yes. And the judge just basically called him out a few sentences ago.
David informs the court that he has a ton of exculpatory evidence in the case. Now, the only thing that he's mentioned as far as this evidence that he thinks is exculpatory is that, he's offered the court an affidavit from his ex-wife saying that he didn't conspire. But I'm telling you right now, even if David could do that and get that, is that going to outweigh all of the evidence and all of the emails that Gaia has that this stuff did in fact happen? I don't think so. Just merely your ex-wife signing an affidavit is not going to outweigh, emails in hand.
Yeah, overwhelming evidence to the contrary.
So David is basically complaining to the judge that he's not a defendant, but he feels like he's being treated like one. And I put red arrows here because it's very important, these two words, what the judge says. The judge says, right now, you don't have any claims pending against you. Right now. At this moment. In other words, she's leaving the door open for things to change.
And what would that mean for David Wilcock if things do change? Because I don't think he understands how any of this works. Didn't he claim that he was going to sue Mr. Cambion and get him the death penalty?
Oh, yeah. He said that Stephen was a hacker and a terrorist and the Unabomber, and that he was basically, trolling UFO accounts. He said he was going to get the guy put in jail for life or the death penalty. Yes, David Wilcock did say that.
It's funny he accused him of terrorism because that's the same thing Wilcock said about me for getting that Emery Smith doxing audio at that conference. He said that there was an act of terrorism that exposed their...
Anything that David doesn't like is an act of terrorism in his mind.
Yep, everything. I guess.
But I mean, as far as what this could, what it could mean, I don't envision a situation where David was added as a defendant in this ongoing case, but I can see a possibility where Gaia opens a new lawsuit against David, especially for revealing the existence of that confidential agreement in the open court, in front of the public, in front of Corey Goode's lawyer.
Well, as Wilcock says here at the end of this particular document, I was apparently given inadequate advice by my attorney.
Yeah, he takes, again, another opportunity to throw his attorney under the bus.
His dying attorney with two dying parents.
Yes.
Okay, so
and I have that highlighted down here. It says Raffi is dying, and his parents are also dying. I mean, but remember, this guy first was like using Armenian vacation or Armenian Christmas as an excuse. I mean, this guy has like an excuse for any day of the week. I really suspect that there's something else going on here with his relationship with David, and that's why he bailed on the whole thing.
Well, he says he's not wanting to work anymore, implying that it has to do with the dying. But I think it has to do with the either.
Yeah, I mean, if the guy really has a mortal condition, if he's really terminal, I mean, can you blame him for not wanting to work anymore?
Spend the last days of your life.
Yeah, like David is almost complaining here that the dying attorney can't work with him anymore because he's dying, and David's like almost complaining that he thinks that the dying man should still work for him.
Yeah, it is almost like that. That's another thing that he used with all of his whistleblowers. His whistleblower, from Pete Peterson to what's that guy's name, Woody. They all died. All of his whistleblowers died before they could give direct testimony or come on his show. I've noticed that trend over the years too.
Yeah, they use people who were seniors, let's put it that way. A lot of the fake whistleblower stuff is people that are so old that they don't have anything to lose. But I've just noticed that, but that's a little topic. But anyway, so David Wilcock also claims at the end of the hearing, because Gaia's counsel asks him, what are you going to do for a lawyer, David? Are we going to continue talking to you, or should we talk to somebody else? And while David is basically complaining that he has no lawyer, David claims that he's going to start CCing Stavatti's lawyer on this matter. Now, he mentions the Stavatti alleged corporate counsel, Terry Dunmeyer. This statement by David is a falsehood. Stavatti doesn't have any corporate counsel. Terry Dunmeyer is an outside attorney that Stavatti is paying to represent them in one case and one case only. They do not work. Terry does not work for Stavatti as corporate counsel, and he's not an employee of Stavatti. Stavatti doesn't have any employees. They've said so in court.
Do you think Wilcock is willingly lying about that, or doesn't understand the company? Do you think? I think Stavatti's taking him for a ride more so than
I think that David. I mean, it's possible he is, but I think that David is trying to rope in Stavatti's attorney. Which, by the way, I mean, is Stavatti going to pay this attorney to represent David's personal legal issues? I have a hard time believing that. Yeah. And are they telling their investors that they're doing that? Oh, hey, by the way, we haven't set up any manufacturing or anything, but we're paying David Wilcock's personal legal bills for something that's totally unrelated to Stavatti. Are they going to tell their investors?
Yeah, and I know And I know for sure, John, he also said on I think several live streams, at least one for sure that I saw and I have a copy of. He was talking about Stavatti and saying that we need this money, the investments and the people buying, these products, to help him deal with not only his tax debt, but to help him deal with the legal fees in this case. In other words, invest in this company, buy products from this company so that I can pay my legal bills, which I think is a whole different shady thing.
I don't think you're referring to his company, right? You're referring when he talks about his products that he has for sale on thedisclosure.com, right?
Oh, no. Unless I'm remembering this incorrectly, which I did a whole show on it, so I don't think that I went. He's referring to getting investments for Stavatti in order to help him pay his bills. And I think Mr. Cambion had mentioned that too, because it's like you're going to get investments for a company and then take that money from the investors and use it to pay your bills. You can't do that.
And he thinks he's going to get like some kind of windfall if an angel investor shows up.
Yes.
And while it's not impossible for him to get a windfall, it would have to be a lot of money. It would have to be millions and millions of dollars. I would have to think for him to get any substantial windfall.
Yes.
And you're right. David has said things like that. Like he wants the company to either get angel investment or to get a loan to get some cash to fix their problems in the short term. I think they underestimate, or at least David underestimates how much cash they need. And that's him saying that about the company is a separate issue from the stuff that he sells on thedisclosure.com. That's personal income for him. And we've already gotten confirmation from Chris Beskar when Beskar was deposed in the Dimitrov case that Beskar also gets a cut of those products that David sells
from his personal website.
Yes, from David's personal website, Beskar gets a cut for his own personal income.
Oh man, this almost sounds like some kind of like pyramid scheme, Ponzi scheme type of thing. It's very, very shady. What do we have here? Oh, go ahead.
So yeah, just to close out on what I was talking about, I think that they're accused of being a Ponzi scheme in the federal lawsuit, but I think the reason that Beskar is getting a cut of some of David's products is I think David's just throwing him a bone, because Beskar, I think, is in financial trouble too. Maybe not as much as David is, or maybe he's even more. I don't know.
They're both in some financial and other trouble. To put it simple. So John, we have, I'd say, limited time. We can go over. I do keep the show at 2 hours for the broadcast on other networks, but let's look at part 2 of this. All of this, by the way, for listeners, is linked up in the show description in the audio version of the show. tstradio.info is the website. rdgable@yahoo.com is the email, and then the Substack is what exactly is it? Just John Christian.
It's actually just jcspad.substack.com. That'll get you there.
Okay. And I'll link that up below in the show as well. So we've got like a little less than 15 minutes. If you can maybe take us through these articles, tell me when to scroll down. Or these
so after the first part of the hearing, David Wilcock was completed. The judge in the court turned to the second issue, which was the Corey Goode discovery dispute. So David was excused, and I don't know at what time he left. I think he left as soon as he was excused. But if he didn't, he would have caught this howler in part 2 from Gaia, where Gaia is telling the judge and the court that they have evidence that David invited Corey to his house in Nederland, Colorado in 2022. So David said earlier in part 1 of the hearing that he had stopped talking to Corey, and yet Gaia is saying conveniently right after David leaves his hearing, they're telling the judge that they have proof that that's not true. So they're trying to get discovery production on this matter and a couple of other matters. The Wilcock resignation letter, Gaia knows that Laura Eisenhower had a copy of it. They've been subpoenaing, I guess, our Laura Eisenhower to get some information from her.
Oh, God.
So she's providing information to the court on communications with Corey and David as well.
I did not know that she was in any way, shape, or form involved in this.
Yeah, she is. She's a third party.
Oh man, I've got my own background with her too. Okay, so that's the first page here on the second part of the transcript.
Right. We can go to the second page. And in the second page, They talk about, they complain to the court that Corey's lawyer, Valerie, has been using her pregnancy as a reason to avoid things. And the judge basically rebukes her and says her pregnancy cannot be a crutch. So ultimately, the judge on this discovery dispute issues 3 different orders for Valerie and Corey to go back and clean up all of their discovery because it's all deficient, according to
Corey's
Gaia.
discovery and Wilcock's discovery both deficient in terms of what
No,
they're
so Wilcock's discovery right now is deficient in terms of those 8 search terms, but Corey's discovery will be deficient on interrogatories, requests for admission, and requests for production. So requests for admission are basically during the discovery process when the opposing lawyers send you a bunch of things and you can choose to admit or to deny them. So they can ask you questions like, were you here on this night? Or
Right.
did you send this email? Did X happen? Did Y happen? Did you do this? And you have to admit or deny those things. So a bunch of those need to get redone for Gaia. And then requests for production, like search terms, like David, Corey also has an order to produce on those.
And I notice here too, it says that Mr. Goode claims that he lost Skype access, so he can no longer access those messages on Skype.
Right,
and
Corey
loss happening here.
Corey apparently was also using this platform, this encrypted email out of Iceland called unseen.is, which my understanding is they've shut down like 5 years ago, but apparently Corey was using that and Gaia wants that as well. Gaia also knows that Corey has been using Tuda, which is a private email provider, and Corey told Gaia during discovery, and I have this highlighted in here somewhere, I don't know if we'll read it or get over it or not, but Corey told Gaia during discovery that he didn't ever remember using Tuda. And Gaia says to the judge, well, actually, we have like 15 emails with your Tuda email in them. So I mean, we know you have been using Tuda.
These guys lie about everything. Lost phones, can't get access to my Skype, don't have the messages, phone memory's too small. It was all email out to WhatsApp. This is just a mess.
And through this hearing, and we haven't conveyed it that well, but through this hearing, if you actually read the transcript, it's easy to see that the judge gets angrier and angrier as this last part of the hearing goes on.
The judge even accused him of not using Mr. and Mrs. at the end of the first document.
Oh, no, that's towards David Wilcock. So at the very end of the first part 1 of this, when we were still dealing with David Wilcock, right before he was excused, the judge took one last jab at him and complained at him for not using, the proper articles, Mr. and Mrs., because he was calling people by their first name. And so the judge rebuked him.
Well, so the judge is at David, but the judge is also increasingly upset in part 2
with Valerie, and as you'll see later in the transcript, at the very, when Gaia brings up an issue, apparently Corey, before the lawsuit happened, Corey had posted something, a transcript of something, on his Sphere Being Alliance website, and Gaia saw it and didn't like it, thought that it violated their rights, so they asked Corey to take it down. His lawyer Valerie Aneros responded that they weren't going to take it down. Gaia keeps pestering them about this, whatever's posted on Sphere Being Alliance, and asking Corey and Val to take it down. Eventually, Val relents and says she'll take it down. Fast forward to the lawsuit and this discovery. They send Corey a request for admission, asking him to admit that this event happened, that this transcript was posted on Sphere Being Alliance. And initially, Corey and Val denied it, even though they were emailing for months or years prior that this was in fact happening. They then in discovery deny that it happened. And the judge, when Gaia's lawyer tells the judge this, and this is towards the very end of the hearing, the judge basically just had it. When Gaia tells the judge, the judge goes to Corey's lawyer, Val, like, what's your explanation for this? And she says, oh, we changed our answer. We amended it. And the judge goes, okay, that's interesting. I don't know how you could possibly mistakenly do that. In other words, the judge is basically saying she thinks Val's full of shit. And the judge basically says, Miss Aneros, you're on notice. If you do not comply with the discovery process, there will be consequences for you and your client. And she also says at one point regarding the deficient interrogatories, she tells Corey's lawyer Val, if you don't comply with all these that I'm ordering you by July 31st, then Gaia can file a motion for sanctions. In other words, you'll get fined. Some very substantial fines.
Could the same
So the
thing
judge,
happen? The same thing could happen to Wilcock too if he doesn't provide the search term information. Could he get
I
fined?
don't. I think possibly, yeah. He's looking at sanctions if he doesn't comply with his motion to compel.
Okay,
I
so
think
what
the
else?
judge has had it with both parties, but
Yeah, it seems like that just from reading the little bit that we've read here. What else is really important to touch on here? And people can, of course, click the links below and go read this all for themselves. What else is important?
yeah. So Corey's excuses for not producing during discovery, other than his lawyer's pregnancy, are that, you know, he doesn't remember what platforms he used. He doesn't recall using a particular platform, or he just can't access a particular platform. You know, all that stuff that you might predictably say years after something like this happened.
And is there any particular yellow highlighted part here that we should focus on the last few minutes?
Oh man, I mean, the yellow ones are all to be focused on. That's why they're in yellow. But
Okay. So let's do this then. We'll go for an addition. Can you do an additional half hour?
Yeah, I can do an additional half hour.
Okay, I'm up against a time wall here anyway because I have to be on a national radio show here in 2 hours roughly, and I have to prepare before that. So anyway, yeah, if you're listening to the show right now, we'll do another half hour on the live streams, and if you're listening on a platform like Ground Zero Plus, just know the show will probably cut off at the 2 hour mark. But you can go to tstradio.info and you can listen to the show there, and of course tonight, because it's a video, you can actually watch it as well. We can only do that because listeners download and stream the free show and subscribe to the archive as on top of that, and buy books from tstradio.info. And I've also got my new book coming out very soon. So those of you who have asked about that, probably hopefully by the end of the month. Okay, John Christian, how do we proceed from here?
So I guess we can really just concentrate on the yellow portions, because those are the ones we really should concentrate on. I mean, from the beginning, you know, the judge is rebuking her for, you know, using her maternity leave and pregnancy as a crutch. Oh, another thing is she just joined us. Corey's lawyer was her own solo practice, but apparently she couldn't hack it, so she just joined a law firm. And the judge informed her when it ordered her to be here for this hearing in the Corey Goode matter that if she couldn't make it because of her maternity leave, she should get a new attorney from her firm to appear in her place. And, you know, before this hearing, I reached out to her new firm and I asked, you know, if they had any plans to have anyone in her place. And I didn't get a response. But here, Valerie tells the judge that she's the only one from her firm that can actually appear here, because her firm only has 2 litigators and the other litigator is state court only. So
have you wondered how common this kind of behavior is in these types of civil cases? I mean, I assume that it happens occasionally, but this seems like it's a total disaster. Every angle of it.
because Corey is on the back. I mean, when Corey wasn't on the back foot, things were not going well, and Valerie was really dropping the ball. But now that Corey's claims in this case have basically died, and we're now proceeding on Gaia's counterclaims because they're countersuing him, now they're on the back foot, and they're just, I mean, they're playing delaying games. You know, we don't have this, we can't get that. They're just playing games at this point.
Yeah,
they're just trying to delay the inevitable because they're on the back foot now.
They're trying to buy time.
You know, aside from this hearing, 2 days after this hearing on July the 3rd, the judge finally did order or issue a recommendation, not an order, but the judge issued a recommendation that Corey pay almost $60,000 of Gaia's legal fees. And he, you know, he'd previously already been ordered $30,000 worth of Chanter's fees, CW Chanter's fees, to pay, because CW Chanter got dismissed from the lawsuit, and you know what happened to him was an injustice too. So they owe CW Chanter and his attorneys $30,000 for legal costs.
So he's
Corey,
up to 6 digits in legal costs.
Almost. He's up to like
90,000.
And you know, if he gets further fines and sanctions, yeah, he could be up into the 6 figures.
That's a lot of light work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
he can't pay. Excuse me. He can't pay for his attorney. So how much money is he getting from the Light Warrior Legal Fund? If he's getting anything, he's probably just using it on personal costs. But I don't know that for certain.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so back to the document here. We have this is the judge, correct? In yellow, you have.
Correct, and she's basically just saying, you know, I understand Corey's lawyer, Val. I understand your circumstances, but your pregnancy cannot be a crutch. And then she talks about how there's only, you know, she's the only other federal court litigator at a new firm. So
okay, yes.
she
okay, this is what you were describing.
Right.
Only 2 litigators.
Right,
Okay,
and the other one's state court only. So you have to be admitted to that court. You can't just be a lawyer and pass the bar somewhere to show up to any old court. You know, in order to actually represent in a legal proceeding and practice law, the court has to have admitted you. And so you have to be admitted to the federal court for the Federal District of Colorado in order to have represented anyone in this case.
Yes, or you can just walk in and represent yourself.
And by the way, even if David's lawyer Raffi had not abandoned him, I don't believe he would be able to represent him because he's not admitted to this court.
He's also dying. So I don't.
And his parents are also dying, yes.
So what's this next? This is also the judge. This is the next page in yellow.
Right. And so the judge is
about the
basically just
response.
saying here that you're going to need interrogatory supplementations, and I'll give you till July 31st to do that. So this is the first order. So he has to supplement his interrogatories, and then, you know, there'll be additional orders for the RFAs and the RFPs as well.
And I see this
So there's an interesting thing here that they have in yellow. It says, you know, then this is Daniel Dingerson, Gaius counsel. He says, as was just explained with interrogatory number 2, there are communications that we now understand existed between Mr. Goode and Miss Eisenhower that leaked. And also have reason to believe that there were communications with other third-party individuals. So, you know, Laura Eisenhower has been providing them information, and
so
they know.
I had no idea that she was involved in this at all. Honestly, let alone
I didn't
agree.
I imagine she was involved to some extent, but I mean, they put some meat on the bones here. They say that they've been getting communications that she has. So, you know, she has been giving them information.
Well, I mean, I know a lot about Laura Eisenhower, and that this doesn't surprise me. She's of the same cloth that these people are cut from, but that's neither here nor there in regard to the documentation. So let's look at the next page.
So, you know, Valerie's given a chance to answer why she isn't complying, and she says, you know, she complains that we were going to send updates, but, you know, my pregnancy came up, yada, yada.
Her computer battery exploded. She didn't say
she didn't use that, but Wilcock basically used that threat as a possibility. But anyway, and here's the judge rebuking Valerie some more. That, you know, you have an obligation to work with your client in good faith. The judge actually says this, like reminding, like, you have an obligation to be serious and not be dishonest. I mean, it's pretty raw that the judge said these things. She was not treated well.
No, you have an obligation to work with your client in good faith and to make sure that their responses to discovery requests are wholesome and accurate, and that they've engaged in diligence in looking for requested documents and that sort of thing. That's pretty harsh. It's pretty direct for a judge to say that.
Yeah, I mean, the judge is saying in so many words, you know, cut the bullshit.
Yeah, and your personal circumstances cannot be a crutch.
Yeah, that's mentioned multiple times.
Okay, now this page is about half yellow. So what am I looking at here?
So the top little line is, you know, again, Valerie is complaining to the court that all of this drama and discovery dispute is making her look bad. That's basically what she's saying here. She's complaining that a record is being created which makes her look unreasonable, which we're not. That's what she says. So she's complaining that this is all making her look bad. I mean, there's a bunch of things that'll make her look bad, but
that's basically what Wilcock is claiming. The whole first part, he's claiming that he's the victim, throwing his attorney under the bus, throwing everybody under the bus.
Right, but Val's the attorney in this case, so.
But she's using the same kind of.
And she's not going to throw Corey under the bus, so she's just making up even worse excuses, frankly.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
Wilcock's
and it's
excuse,
just
my
human, right?
attorney, remember Wilcock's excuse from part one was, well, I haven't been cooperating because my attorney told me not to. That's a better excuse than, well, we were going to send an update, we just didn't.
Yeah, no,
You know?
yes, it is. I guess what I'm getting at is that it's the same kind of mentality of like you're clearly not doing your job or don't know what you're doing, and then the argument in response, the defense is this is making me look really bad. It just is so like childish and juvenile, driven by narcissism. Even if it doesn't matter if it's the attorney or if it's the individual they're representing. I just find it it's just so unprofessional especially for a courtroom.
And then, the judge complains that the case is 5 years old and that discovery's been going on for a year. And, those are valid things to complain about because they're both true. And, Gaia complains that they constantly find new email addresses for Corey and whatnot. See, at the beginning of discovery, they asked for Corey to identify all of the things he used. And a problem that Gaia is complaining about here is that as discovery goes on, Corey keeps dropping them like a new email that they weren't aware of. And so they kind of have to restart discovery all over again when they find out about this new stuff.
Oh, so he had lots of different accounts and lots of different.
Yeah, lots of different stuff, man. I mean, he was all over the place with it. And I'm sure there's a reason for that. I'm sure it was, in anticipation of this very day, because if you're all over the place with the platforms you use, it's much more difficult to corral it all. So he's using that to his advantage. But the judge does say, Valerie, you need to sit down with your client and corral everything that they used and get back to Gaia.
So that means that every time that just to clarify, every time they present something, it sort of is bringing up a whole nother process of discovery because the court's learning that, oh, there's actually more information here. There's another.
Well, the Gaia's counsel learns that. So yeah, they need to, supplement their case.
Yeah. So it just keeps building. Right. Building.
And it's delaying the discovery process. And the judge knows. That's why the judge is short with her.
Okay, I see. Is that all that we get on this page, or we get anything specific down here at the bottom we should look at?
Yeah, that's basically where they're talking about Tuda, the private email service that we previously talked about. Guy is in possession of up to 15 emails proving that Corey did use Tuda, whereas Corey has told them that he can't ever remember using it. So Corey has a problem there, and he's going to have to supplement that and get back to Gaia.
And then this page here, it says.
So the first part that I have highlighted, this is the judge talking, and the judge is asking Valerie, what has she done to get with Corey and figure out what he used that's relevant to their discovery? And Val's response is, Corey doesn't have access to some of this stuff. Or he doesn't remember. Or she remembers to stress that they're doing this in good faith. She has to actually stress with the court, and we're doing this in good faith. We promise you.
Which is, again, I know that she's the representative in this case, but going back to part one, that's very similar to Wilcock saying that, hey, look, I didn't do anything illegal.
Right.
Yeah, very, very kind of a similar type of an attitude. Okay, so she's saying, look, we're doing this in good faith. He doesn't remember, or he doesn't have access to the stuff, and the judge is trying to get
and then
better.
Dingerson interjects, and the judge allows Dingerson to interject. And this guy Dingerson, by the way, he seems like a killer attorney. And at this part where I didn't highlight, this is where he complains about the discovery process, where they have Corey has the obligation to produce this stuff for them, and they shouldn't have to continuously on their end try and push Corey and Val for information. They need to produce it on the basis of good faith.
Yeah, so going back to what I was saying a second ago, so he says it shouldn't be iterative, that we have to identify every single email account or platform used by Mr. Goode. They should just, if they're working in good faith, they should provide what's being asked.
Exactly. And so that's what Dingerson is complaining about here at the end of this page.
That's pretty critical. Okay, so now we're moving on to the next page here.
And now here's where Dingerson is still talking. And, you know, Dingerson brings up interrogatory number 2, dealing with Laura Eisenhower. Dingerson complains to the court that at no time during discovery did Corey or his lawyer state that they had any communication with Laura Eisenhower. Now, look what Dingerson says here, and this is why I put the red arrow in. He says, we know her answers are not complete. Perhaps some of these omissions, you know, there is a good explanation that plaintiffs did not remember the answer, ... Perhaps. This is Dingerson telling the court that he thinks they're full of shit. That he's basically telling the judge that, you know, we don't have a lot of confidence that they're making these mistakes in good faith.
So it seems like the judge thinks they're full of shit. Dingerson
Yeah, right. Now here, go to the next highlighted portion where the judge says, all right, so that is a problem, Miss Llaneros. I really need you between now and July 31st to corral all your emails to opposing counsel that provide additional supplements and discovery responses, corral all that information, and put it in omnibus supplement to discovery responses. And then she even gives a back in my day story where she tells Val that when she was an attorney, something similar happened to her. And, you know, the judge, when she was an attorney, had to go back and supplement her client's discovery responses. Like, this is normal. David Wilcock earlier claimed that it was a terrorist attack or something akin to that thereof. But, you know, this is normal. They know that this is how this works. And the fact that the judge has to, admonish her in this way is really sad.
Yeah, well, okay, so the judge is saying that there, but yeah, going back to what Dingerson said, he was saying obviously the same thing. You shouldn't have to constantly bring up new emails and new identities, and they should just present what is requested.
Exactly.
So clearly, I mean, based on all of this, we'll finish up going through these documents, John. But based on all of this, everything that people like myself and others have speculated on over the years about the stories these people have told and the things that they've done, it's safe to say in a not, let's say legal or lawful terminology, but it's safe to say these people are all full of shit. And if they're just for listeners, there are some listeners to my show who still believe some of these people. If these people are lying to courts like this, I mean, what do you think they're doing to you on a YouTube stream? Just for people that still believe this, keep that in mind. This is utterly a clown show. It's ridiculous. Go back to this document, John. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so again, the judge issues another order on the RFAs, and that's due on July 31st. And then again, she just, rips into Valerie again, saying it's incumbent on you, pursuant to your professional obligations, to get Go Counsel on board to take this case while you were dealing with your personal circumstances. So when she's basically saying, if your pregnancy is a problem, you need to get someone else to take on this case, which is a problem because she's doing it for free. So who's going to take on a free case? Lawyers typically don't like to do that.
Yeah, and they only have one other litigator who can't do it. So,
and this is later on. Dingerson starts complaining again, and when he complains, it's a very serious complaint. He says here, talking about Corey and Val's behavior, he says, tell the judge, or when they are frankly providing a response that is clearly and definitively refuted by the facts and communications that have previously occurred between counsel that are sitting here today. In other words, he's basically saying some of her discovery productions are provably false. Provably. And he's complaining about that.
Rightfully so. So again, everybody knows that they're lying. They're
right.
They're not proceeding in good faith.
When they're asking Corey and Val to admit or deny something and they deny it, even when there's proof from Valerie's own emails that it's true, they're complaining about this. And then, of course, at the bottom here, they bring up that transcript that was supposed to sphere being a last that I talked about earlier. Of course, they made them back and forth about that. Then Corey and Val denied it, and then they changed it, and then the judge got really angry when that happened. This was towards the end of this
part here.
Yeah, he says, look, she says, Val's response is, my response is, we already told him that we would amend that. Judge says, okay, that is interesting. I am going to order you to review all of your responses to the requests for admission. It's very troubling to me. The response to RFA 17 doesn't seem to be a mistake. The judge is basically saying, yeah, Val, I don't think that's a mistake. I think you purposely were dishonest. That's what the judge is saying.
Wow, yeah, I see that.
And again, that further quote the judge, again, Missioneros, I will remind you of your obligations under Rule 26 and Rule 37 in response to discovery requests that you shouldn't sign off on something unless you verify it as an attorney.
Yes.
So, that the judge just continues to rail into her, and she's not done. We'll see in here. I highlighted a part in red. That's totally, you got to get that.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, I got it.
So
right
again,
here.
Dingerson is just going off on the judge again. He's bringing up the fact that Val has given them responses in discovery that are provably false and has told Gaia that they will not change their responses. And when he tells the judge this, the judge says, all right, I'm inclined to move on, but Missioneros, you are on notice. And if you continue to fall short on discovery obligations here, there could be consequences for you and your client. Just keep that in mind. The judge told her this.
Basically threatening her to.
Yeah, the judge is basically saying, keep it up. FAFO. That's basically what the judge is saying here. FAFO.
So what could potentially happen to her as an attorney?
Probably monetary sanctions. If they're still not compliant on the 31st, which is when this is due, then Gaia will probably move for sanctions on Val, and she'll probably get sanctioned.
By the end of this month. It was the 31st.
I don't know if it'll happen by the end of this month. It'll almost certainly be by the end of the year, but I don't know for certain.
Well, the deadline
this case
for
is
the supplements.
Yeah, right. That's still on the 31st. So I imagine if they don't make that court date, that sometime in August, we will see a filing by Gaia moving for sanctions on Valerie.
I'm telling you, I think Wilcock's counting on the hover car for the Hawaii planet to get out of all this, flee the jurisdiction.
It really is the case for 6 years now, because he's been a Stavatti equity holder for about 6 years. He's been hoping for 6 years that this investment pays off in spades. I mean, for the first couple of years that he was in Stavatti, he didn't even really talk about it. He basically kept it very close to the chest. It wasn't until late 2021 when he sold that course with, Chris Beskar, his codename Ben, and discovering like the secrets of free energy and anti-gravity. And I've talked to people who took the course, and it was like awful.
That was I did a whole show on that, because that was the video where he claimed, I actually made a song about it, and I put the clips in there. He claimed that his new insider was Ben, but he was also talking in that piece about how his brother was named Ben Kenobi before Star Wars, and that Star Wars took the idea of Ben Kenobi from his family. Did you ever hear that one?
I didn't hear that, but I've gone into, and I go into this in the book I'm writing, they have plagiarized Star Wars with their claims regarding Beskar armor.
Oh, really? So they've directly just taken.
Yeah. Are you familiar with this? So there's been several instances where David Wilcock and a couple other people around Stavatti have claimed that Chris Beskar came up with the idea for Beskar armor. Beskar allegedly in the late 90s did some kind of work or provided them some kind of spaceship models to Industrial Light and Magic, and to show him their gratitude, they named, an element from the Star Wars universe, Beskar armor, after him. And I've proven this to be a falsehood. First of all, anyone can go to Wikipedia, which is like the main wiki online for Star Wars nerds, and anyone can go to Wikipedia and look up Beskar armor and see that it's Star Wars author Karen Travis that penned this term. But that wasn't really good enough for me, because I'm researching and writing a book. So I actually reached out to Karen Travis, and I got a response from her. She confirmed that she invented Beskar armor in 2006, and she confirmed she's never heard of Chris Beskar. But that wasn't all. I went to a second Star Wars author, and I asked them about it. And they said, oh yeah, it's Karen Travis that came up with that term. So I have the author herself and another author and Wikipedia all saying that Karen Travis, the fiction writer, came up with this term. It wasn't Chris Beskar. But David Wilcock has said on several occasions that that's the truth, that's what happened. And Stephen Cambion catfish called Beskar one night live on stream. And Beskar admitted on public live stream in front of everyone that, yes, he did invent Beskar armor. So he validated what David was saying. And so we have proof that they're just engaged in a conspiracy to plagiarize. They're just straight up plagiarizing a Star Wars author.
Yeah, definitely. I've speculated on that for so many years. I've always joked about how these guys watch Star Trek, Star Wars, something like that, and they just sit there with a notebook and they're like, "Oh, that's a good idea." Like when Emery Smith was interviewed on Gaia by, I think it was Wilcock, and Wilcock asks him, "So what did you see in the underground bases?" And he says, "Well, they had these fancy doors that went when they opened, kind of like Star Trek." It's like these people are just watching science fiction and then incorporating it into their science fiction stories.
Well, yeah, David said many times how like Stargate SG-1, that TV show, basically is, you know, a root concept for a lot of the stuff that he uses. Apparently, there was a lot of what he refers to as disclosure on that TV show. So, I mean, that's just one show. And then, I mean, don't even get started on Ancient Aliens, that show.
Yeah, maybe we can save that for another episode. And as a matter of fact, I know for a fact that some of the stories that I know Emery Smith in particular ripped them off from old Art Bell shows. I've got clips of them, people like Emery Smith making claims, and then I've got clips from old Art Bell shows in like the early 90s, mid 90s, where someone says verbatim the same thing.
This clique of guys always plagiarizes. I mean, David takes other people's content. I mean, that whole, you know, during his live streams, because I don't know how much you and your audience are attuned to David's live streams these days, but part of his live stream is he takes the posts from an X account called Shadow of Ezra, and he derives a numerological significance from each one of these posts, usually the date, stamp, or time, and he looks up a Q post by that number. By the numerological significance, he looks up the Q post, and he he tries to draw some kind of significance between whatever Shadow is posting about in any given post and the Q post that he looks up. So he says, "Oh, this Q post predicted that Shadow of Ezra was going to say this or whatever." And David also admitted on stream he didn't come up with this; he took it or he stole it from X-22 Report.
So it's QAnonomancy. So he's
basically QAnonomancy.
Jesus. Okay, so this is the last page. What's on this page, real quick? We'll wrap up.
So basically, at this page, the judge basically says how, you know, that she recaps all the orders that she's issued, and in blue here, I write there, I highlight that she floats the idea of the parties scheduling another settlement conference to maybe try to come to a settlement. She even mentions, like, I don't know if anything has changed since the last settlement conference, as if the ass whipping that Valerie took in this meeting was not, you know, motivation enough for a settlement. But a few days after this, Corey would get slapped with the recommendation for those legal fees too. So I think the judge really wants this case off her docket, and I think she would not mind at all the parties coming together to settle. But I think that's still a bridge too far at this point, because Corey still is too stubborn.
Yeah, too stubborn, and among other things. Okay, so we've got these two, part 1, part 2 of this on your Substack. I've got the links to that below in the audio version of tonight's show. I've also got the links that you kindly sent me to the 3 different court cases from courtlistener.com. And this is a separate thing. This was that June 15th news release. I didn't get to this earlier about Stavatti. Is there any way you can summarize this?
So I'm pretty sure that they came out with this press release to appease David Wilcock. David Wilcock recently said back in early June, I believe. It was either late May or early June. He said in a live stream that Stavatti had finally gotten a deal. He says this constantly over several years. We're getting a deal. We just got a deal. None of the deals turn out to be anything more than vaporware. But supposedly Stavatti has wet ink signed a deal that is $129 billion in value. And I'm not making that number up. That's
a lot of money.
what they're saying.
That's a lot of money.
David has said that Chris Beskar has told him this is the largest aerospace contract in history, or one of them. And it's for 10,000.
10,000, I see that.
10,000 jetliners. Now, when I saw this, I mean, obviously I knew it's like vaporware, just like their other press releases over years and years. You know, it's been well documented with the people that I talk to in the community that, you know, Stavatti has many press releases advertising many deals, and none of them have ever come true. But when I saw that 10,000 number, I actually looked into the statistics, and apparently over the next 10 years, so by 2035, the number of jetliners that are in the air is supposed to increase by about 10,000. So it almost seems like Beskar wrote that number on there. He just took like every single new jetliner that's supposed to enter service over the next 10 years. He thinks that's going to be a Stavatti jetliner.
Yeah,
So he just wrote 10,000 in there. Like, you know, Boeing might as well just pack it up and go home.
Well, I just looked that up randomly since 2005, how many 737 planes, for example, has Boeing produced? And this is one of the biggest companies in the world. They've produced 12,134.
Right, and that's over decades.
Yeah, that's 20 years.
That's what they've ever done.
And he's going to do almost all of that within the next 5 or so years, 6 years.
No, I mean, they don't even have a place to manufacture these aircraft, dude. Like, they're Niagara hangar. They've been partially evicted from that location. I talked to a Stavatti associate on the phone. They told me that the power station there is ancient, and there's no way it's going to support a modern manufacturing concern.
Oh, man.
So that property is nowhere near ready. And I've also been told that the hangar is too small to build a jetliner. But, you know, that's what they're pushing.
I don't know how anybody can still in any way, shape, or form support these people. That's why I do shows like this. I really appreciate you not only coming on tonight, but going through and highlighting all of these documents from the courts. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming on the show and spending a little extra time with us. That's very much appreciated. Thank you.
No problem. I'm still got my head deep down in Stavatti land, so I'm sure you'll be hearing from me in the future about, you know, upcoming things that have to do with Stavatti.
Well, I would love to maybe do another show with you in the future. When you have something, you can reach out to me, message me anytime. I do every subject imaginable, and I like to touch on the David Wilcock. I call these shows David Wilcock blocking, just to try to inform people of who this guy is and what these people have done. And I think we've got a lot of listeners that actually stop supporting them because of that. So I want to.
David's audience has gone down substantially. Even in the last 4 months or so, he's lost about 25% of his audience.
People have begun to notice, and that's why I do what I do, because I feel like it's justice, especially for him calling me a terrorist and all the other things that
didn't he get you kicked out of, like, what was it, Contact in the Desert, or?
Yeah, that's where they had to give me a covert pass and not use my name. They had to put on a fake name to get me in.
Really? Because David Wilcock?
The woman that ran it, I'm friends with her, and she wanted to give me the pass, so they had to put down a fake name. And he's spread lies about me like he has other people. I haven't been around him for so long that now he's focused on getting the death penalty for people like Mr. Cambian, or maybe you too. We all might get the death penalty. We're gonna hang together. Just remember, ladies and gentlemen, Raw says no refunds. You don't get any refunds back for this. All right.
By the way, David Wilcock said he's trying to plan to do a live event in the next 2 months, because now he's very financially cash strapped. So on his last live stream, he was tantalizing his audience with the possibility of a live event.
All right. Well, I wish if I can find out where it's going to be, if it's like an event in person, I would love to be able to attend that.
I haven't heard anything, and for all I'm concerned right now, it's still vaporware, but we'll see.
Well, the last time I saw these guys, I don't know if you recall I think they released a video. It was with Jordan Sather at Contact in the Desert, and I had asked him about the cabal, and I said, I think that you're lying and making all this up, and he accused me of coming up behind him and attempting to assault him by asking questions. And then that's when David Wilcock said that it was an act of terrorism, and they had a police presence. And then people people that were there at the conference said, there's no police presence. No police showed up. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's kind of like David said he was swatted last August.
Oh yeah, I
but
heard
it
that
wasn't
one.
a swatting. It was the animal control officers just politely knocked on his door, and when he didn't answer, they just left the card.
Yeah, that's
and
swatted.
left. But David said he got swatted.
Well, I mean, he's been really hanging out with that moose and those turkeys and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, he's going full grizzly man. It seems like David is like he complains that he's all alone in this cabin. He can't live anywhere else. And he doesn't want to lose the cabin, and the mortgage payment is over $6,000 a month. So he admitted this on stream. Yeah, he admitted this on stream. So he's all alone and miserable. And lately he's been talking to the animals. Of course, for a while it was the turkeys, and a turkey's not gonna hurt you, so feeding turkeys isn't a big deal. But then he started throwing apples to the moose. And his last live stream, he had it streamed with bears. Moose and bears, those can be pretty dangerous animals. David really needs to be careful.
He's named some of them. I think Mary or something, Marianne or something.
The moose is Monica, and
Monica,
I don't know what the bears are named.
He's an Ace Ventura, Dr. Doolittle. Yes, he's probably talking to animals too. Archangel Michael, moose. All right. Oh, go ahead, and we'll find.
I was just gonna say, David also admitted on this last live stream that apparently he's still urinating and shitting in the woods. Yes, he has a nice house and it has bathrooms, but apparently David has been pissing and shitting in the woods.
Maybe that's where the Archangel Michael told him to do it. You get extra superpowers if you take it down.
I guess if you do it all natural outside, I guess you get some kind of psychic benefit. Who knows?
This man running around naked around his house in the snow, talking to bears, taking dumps in the woods. This is
because that's basically what he's been doing. Like if you look at his live streams for last year, on these 6-hour live streams, David has to use the bathroom, right? I guess his bladder he's getting old and that bladder is getting smaller, so he has to take frequent bathroom breaks. So to prevent people from dumping on his live stream and killing his view count, he starts showing these nature videos, and it's basically him just being crazy in the snow. Some of them are pretty funny. They have pretty good comedic value.
Yes, some of them are. I think he should just make those and leave the UFO stuff and all the other crap that he talks about alone. Make some and hey, for that matter, I think Corey Goode should just do fiction. It'd be a lot better off.
Well, that's what he's doing now, and Corey's fiction isn't doing that hot. His webcomic is available for free now, and are people still buying it? I mean, with his deposition, everyone knows that he's making it up now. So,
all right, I'm showing everybody on the video. If you're listening audio, I'm showing everybody these outside videos around his house, the moose versus the turkey standoff, and the.
So those videos with the pine cones, back in the middle of 2022, when David was not streaming that often, he was kind of losing his mind, and so like the squirrels would like leave stuff on like his porch or his deck or whatever, and David would see the stuff that the squirrels would leave for him and think that it was of some significance, so he would rearrange the objects. He's like rearranging the objects for the squirrels.
Oh, I saw that.
And then he would claim that the squirrels would like come back and rearrange the objects in some other way, and David would interpret this as a message.
And then take it to the internet and correlate it with a Q post, and that's what the squirrels want us to know.
He didn't do that final part, but there's still time. I guess he could still do it.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if he did do it. And I got one piece of advice for David. If you have trouble finding a lawyer, you can always 3D print one. Always 3D print a lawyer. Bring it into the courtroom. Let it talk for you. Or maybe the moose can be his attorney. The moose is a better attorney than he is.
There has been some speculation in some circles that when David went into the hearing without a lawyer, that maybe he used ChatGPT to formulate his legal arguments or something. But I think he rambled and went off of tangents way too much. I mean, if he got AI to help him, he went way off the script because he just rambled in that court hearing and didn't do himself any favors.
No. Okay, well, for just in case I know these people, especially Laura Eisenhower, they have people that troll the internet looking for stuff and then reporting it to them. They have their little minions, and then they try to get stuff taken down. YouTube is not our main platform. It's like a sub of a sub platform. So this is whatever you want to call it. We are commenting on all of the stuff that we're showing, and nothing that I'm showing you today is my own work. It belongs to, it's either public record in terms of the cases or stuff we've done or we've talked about. What John has posted, and we've shown his Substack, and of course the videos and whatnot are all public on YouTube. So shouldn't be any problems. If the video for whatever reason gets taken down, I will also have a copy of it. I can either re-upload or it'll be on the website so you can watch it and listen to it for free. tstradio.info. And again, I want to thank you, John Christian, who hates Christians, John Christian Spadavecchia. Thank you for joining me on the show today.
It's been a privilege. Thank you, Ryan.
You have a good night, and I will talk to you hopefully soon, and we can maybe do something in the future.
Definitely.
Okay. All right. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Okay. There goes John. We went over the time I've got to prepare here tonight live, because we've got going to be on Ground Zero as well later, talking about the Black Goose story and talking about the archetype and the pop culture of that. And I don't know, maybe some UFOs. We're not exactly sure. I'm not exactly sure yet. I've got to go read the show description. I've got a lot of stuff to do today, so can't go any longer or any further than this. Thank you so much for supporting the Secret Teachings. If you keep doing that, we will continue to be here live video streaming Friday night. Again, the links are in the show description below. tstradio.info is the website. rdgable@yahoo.com is the email. And if you would like to get access to the advertisement-free show, you can subscribe on our website. I've got my books there. If you're listening on and watching the video stream, you can simply go to the archive and listen to the audio only. If you missed something, you want to listen to it instead of watch, because maybe you're doing something, can't watch it. It is in the audio archive as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. Didn't get a chance to go through everybody in the chat, but I acknowledge that everybody in the chat room is participating, and everybody who's usually here is here. We do have a lot of I think some new listeners in the chat tonight as well. Thank you for joining us. Next week, we'll go into the chat and we'll have more of a direct conversation with you. Thank you so much. And I will bring up a little bit of music here. I don't know how well you can hear it because sometimes the audio doesn't come through, but I'll play a little bit of music and we will wind down the show. Stay safe, stay informed, stay healthy as always. And I will talk to you on the next broadcast. Have a great night.